'cause this feeling is real.
I don't think anybody's joined me yet, but welcome to the live Arcade Heroes IAAPA 2022 review. Let me get to the right screen here. Sorry, I think probably when I hopped on there, I was yelling at somebody who was bringing something into the store that they're not supposed to. They're called animal riders. I hate them. And so scuff up my floors and all that. But anyways, welcome to the IAAPA 2022 review. I know not everybody knows what IAAPA is. It doesn't get a lot of mainstream gaming coverage, and so I'll get into that and everything else. If there's any issues with my microphone, because I know there have been complaints about that before, just let me know. I'll try and adjust it on the fly. I am at one of my arcades in Salt Lake City, Utah, Arcade Galactic, and right now there are a couple of people playing Maximum Tune 5, and it's a bit noisy, and got some other games on as well. I may have to go away from the camera once in a while to go turn on extra games. I have some games off because I haven't had many customers in or anybody interested in the stuff that's in the back, and so just saving power. It's very expensive to have electricity at an arcade. But before I begin, I wanted to do a shout out to all of the advertisers on Arcade Heroes. None of them specifically are sponsoring this video, but I just wanted to give them a shout out because, I mean, the costs of operating a website, a blog that's been around for 16 years, so there's a lot of media. It's gone up quite a bit in recent times, and so by their assistance in buying advertising on the site. It really helps keep the site going, and likewise, anybody who buys stuff through the Arcade Heroes TeePublic page, that also helps. So thank you to everybody that has, but want to mention Touch Magix, who's got the banner at the top. We got Primetime Amusements, an arcade distributor, here on the banner side, and then Raw Thrills on the side. Currently with Nitro Trucks, but they might want to be updating that to something new soon. But anyways, I'm, as I said, covering IAAPA. If you've been following the channel for a while or you're recently subscribed, you've probably seen that I've been posting a lot of videos. Now, this is the most, as far as video content, that I'll post during any given year in the following weeks after the IAAPA trade show takes place, which is, it always happens the week before Thanksgiving, and I'm able to film a lot of brand new arcade games that are going to be coming out to arcades. Well, some of them already are available and can be found out there, but there's plenty of content that is introduced at this show. And again, it's a trade show. It's like E3 for the arcade and amusement and theme park industry. And so if you've been watching any of the videos, then you probably noticed that. But there's so much news to go over, so many new releases that just kind of get dumped all at once, that it can be easy for certain things to get lost in the noise. But there are these posts on the Arcade Heroes website, or if you prefer to read about it, you can go here. I put a list of all the new video games, of the redemption games, of the larger scale attractions, and my thoughts on there. And so this will just kind of be a video essay of this part 2 and the part 1 post there. And I'll follow this list as best I can. And I've got the chat up in case anybody wants to ask questions or have a discussion, a deeper discussion on anything in particular. And let's go through it. And I created a playlist on YouTube, IAAPA 2022. So if you're interested in seeing all the videos that I have posted, then just, yeah, you can check that playlist out, and there's tons of content there, as I shot a lot of footage. Some of it's repeat stuff, but yeah, let's get to it. So, very first game, starting alphabetically in the video. And my apologies, I might have to pause here shortly because I'm expecting to have a guy who's working on our AC unit and heater units. They just turned it on, and so you know how it smells when you've not had a heater on for months, and it's that weird dusty musty smell. It's kind of filling the air and smells funky in here right now, just like that. So, and sadly enough, when I got to the show, like the first day of the IAAPA show, I started to lose my voice, and by the end of the show I just had no voice left. Turns out I had a sinus infection. But anyways, first game on the list for video games was Arcana Heart 3 Xtend. I think the full name is Arcana Heart 3 Love Max. 6 stars, 6 exclamation points, Extend. And this is a game, I'll turn this off just so I don't overbury you with that. But this Arcana Heart 3 already has a fan base. People know it, and it's an anime girl fighter, and something that's existed in Japan for a while. There was Arcana Heart 3, which was the original release. And then, of course, there was the updates to it, I think Xtend. But this one will be as exA-Arcadia. It's on the exA-Arcadia platform, which if you've never heard of, it's like a modern Neo Geo MVS. It has 4 cartridge slots, and the games are available on little cartridges, which I have right here. And so they look often like this. Usually they're actually black, but sometimes they do special colors for them. And so this allows the Arcana Heart 3 series to come to arcades that aren't in Japan. And that's one mistake that I sometimes see mentioned when there's a big announcement of a new game that's unveiled for the exA-Arcadia, where they'll say something like, "Oh, this game's coming to Japan." It's like, no, well, yeah, technically yes, but anything announced for exA-Arcadia, it's coming worldwide, and so anything that they announce, particularly with the Japanese press release, it's still being made available for arcades like mine to buy. I have an exA-Arcadia system. As I showed you, I have a cartridge there, and so anything announced for it, it's not just Japan. But the version at the trade show, it was not complete. It only allowed for 2 players, and so you couldn't do the 1-player story mode. I mean, all the graphics looked fantastic on it, high-res 2D stuff. Just jump ahead here to some battle. At first I had to play by myself, and then when I saw some guy walking by, it's like, hey, you want to play with me real quick? And so, and also has some cool effects. I mean, no, it's nothing that's like pushing the limits of the hardware or anything, but I mean, there's plenty of stuff that's available on your consoles that you can download from PSN or Xbox Live Arcade or the Switch eShop that doesn't push the hardware either. I mean, yes, with exA-Arcadia, I would like to see a few games that come along that do push it to its limits and see how that would go. But sometimes you don't need that, and so it seemed fine. It's just I don't play tons of fighters, and you do the basic stuff, your Hadouken style movements and see what happens, and sometimes just experiment and do a little bit button mashing and see what you pull off. But I mean, while it had the panels on there where you could read all the move sets, I mean, usually in the heat of battle you can't stop and look at that sort of thing, so these things usually require some practice to get good at. But that is our first game, and let me pause here. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I could smell it. So when that happens,
I couldn't get down fast enough to say, hey, it's gonna stink.
Right. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's the way heaters
the panel
are.
is on. Everything is on. It's operational. It is in terribly, terribly poor shape.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. 37 years old.
Gotcha.
So I really didn't look at the filters or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to, I can. It's up to you.
I'll probably wait it through the winter and see how it goes.
So there's 2 things that I would not going to necessarily advise you, but I'm going to advise you. 1, if you're going to stay in the space, get a new unit. Mm-hmm. Okay. 2, I'm going to tell the office the same thing. 2, renegotiate your lease and have them maintain it.
Right. Yeah.
So then you're not liable.
Right. Part of the frustrating thing is, as I recall, they didn't. Since I'm a temporary tenant, they don't really allow me to negotiate anything. But they are under new ownership, so maybe they will.
I would try.
Sure.
I would try, and I'm going to say the same thing to them because I don't think it's fair to you,
right,
to have to shell out $40,000 or whatever the case might be,
right,
for a 37-year-old piece of equipment.
Yeah. That's not anything I have access to anyway.
No,
so.
exactly.
And it's their building.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents for whatever it is.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. So 1128, like we had discussed, that's the total.
Okay. Sign and accept?
Yep, and then I'll take it from there. was typing away and not paying attention, and it wasn't.
That's all right.
So I apologize.
You're fine.
Zip code attached with this card.
84119.
199.
119.
119. Signature for the transaction, and then there's actually going to be 2 more for the invoice. And then we'll make sure you get the invoice. Okay, like I said, there's 2 more signatures. Sign this is for the invoice itself, and then the other one saying you're satisfied. So you'll just hit accept. Last one, sorry.
Oh.
This is your happy signature. Not that you're really happy. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. That part's done. So
Okay, well, that's good, I guess.
it's running for now.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. It hasn't been in a while,
Yeah.
so thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I know in the past some people have said they wanted to see more videos of operating an arcade, and I have wanted to do some things. I just haven't had a lot of time. And that was something that I just had to do, which drives me insane, is that I had to pay over $1,000 to get our heater / AC repaired, and the most of that cost came from replacing a panel, which somebody went on the roof, stole our panel, probably took it to a different one, and then left it open, and then they turned off our heat and AC, and I'm the one that's liable for covering that, and so I'm not very happy, but there's nothing I can really do about it other than pay out the nose. But now they're talking about the entire unit needs to be replaced because it's almost 40 years old, and if I'm liable for that, like, the cost on that is astronomical. I don't have the money, so if it comes down to it, I might have to move out of here, and there's really no mall to go to that's left in Salt Lake that doesn't already have some giant family entertainment center, a multi-million-dollar family entertainment center attached to it. And so, I mean, I already have one down the hall for me right now, and so it's frustrating, and it's, you know, who knows? I'll do everything I can to stay in business, but I'm already planning on closing my second location and bringing that equipment here, and then it's like, you know, I might need to go find another place to do business. And I actually do have some ideas. I've been kind of looking around because I've been aware of this for a little bit, but so far the mall hasn't come to me and say, you need to pay $40,000 to replace your AC unit, even though it's our building, which, so I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But sometimes these contracts are, well, rarely are contracts favorable to the tenant, and I'm a temporary tenant, and so it's kind of asinine, the things that landlords will require of their tenants, where it's like, it's your building, I'm just, you know, renting it out temporarily, but they practically don't allow temporary tenants to negotiate at all. It's basically just take it or leave it. And so anyways, good to see you guys that have stuck through me, and later on I'll edit a lot of that waiting stuff out. But yeah, I'm ready for the holidays, and so one other thing that has to do with how we have to operate is I have to be open when the mall is open. And so that right now there's holiday hours for the mall. Most malls do this, or all of them do as far as I know. And they have a holiday hours are 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. currently, and it's usually totally worthless for an arcade to open that early in the morning. Like, even 11 seems a bit early for the most part. But we are open every day of the year, excepting, I think it's usually Mother's Day. Sometimes they change it. It's Easter or it's Mother's Day. It's one or the other. It's not both. and Christmas are closed. Otherwise, we're open Christmas Eve, we're open on the day after Christmas, but actually the day after Christmas is super busy for an arcade business. And I actually imagine that if I had to be open on Christmas, which I wouldn't want to be, I want to spend that time with my family, and I've rarely been able to spend time with my family over the past 2 years in having 2 locations. This is one frustration, and I'll do a post-mortem on running 2 locations in another video. But it would be super busy on Christmas just because there are people that are out and about and want to be entertained. You know, movie theaters tend to be pretty busy on Christmas. But anyways, hello to everybody in chat, and so I'll keep an eye on that, but we'll continue. So I already talked about Arcana Heart 3 extend for the exA-Arcadia. That's coming spring, I think, 2023. Next up in the A's is Asphalt 9 Legends Arcade VR by LAI Games, and as this video showed, it's basically the DX version, which you can see right here, but instead of you facing the screen, you're facing away from it, and you have a VR headset. And now, one odd thing that they did to this that I can't fully understand, and I guess another thing I should throw out is I want to be honest in my assessment of all these games and praise them for the good things, but also criticize the bad things, and or sometimes perplexing things. And so it's like it says here, I don't really understand the purpose of the second monitor that's on here because the player can't see it. I mean, it might be there some of the time, but I don't know what kind of information that it's supposed to show the players that they just can't read on a static, much cheaper panel. So it just seems like an unnecessary expense to me. And I know that just one of these is probably going to be, I heard a quote, but I didn't get an actual quote from a distributor, but I heard around 50,000 per unit. So it seems like you could remove that and maybe save $1,000, or I don't know how much a small 7-inch monitor like that might cost. Probably it should cost a lot less, but oftentimes within these things they'll tack on extra costs. But anyways, Asphalt 9 Legends is very well known since it is a console and I think a mobile game. And for the arcade version, it's not a free-to-play sort of thing, so they've removed any of that sort of stuff on it. But they did add a new mode where it's the one you're seeing here, where you're basically running away from the police, I think, or a chasing sort of mode, or I think it's called Hunted. And so you go through these things, and you could already in the regular arcade game push a button on your steering wheel, and then it would spin your car around, and you could use that to destroy another car. And so overall, it's still the same high quality as with the non-VR versions, but now you can look around and you can play the non-hunted version of the game in there too. But it's just at least a nice addition that they threw in there to make it a little bit more interesting if you want to have VR with your arcade machines. But and then here's a better look at the motion base and sort of see the monitor there. But again, I don't understand the purpose of that second monitor, so that's the only thing to me that on this one I'm just like, okay. But the graphics on it are fantastic, and so that's one thing that I often hear people complain about in comments is arcade graphics all suck, they all look like cell phone games. Like, no, this looks really good. I mean, granted, I know there is a mobile version of this, or I think there is, but still this one is able to look much nicer, you know, nicer lighting and textures and solid frame rate and all that stuff. But that is available now from LAI Games. Let's move on to the next thing, which would be Bond 007. And as I mentioned in my story, or sorry, my booth of trying to find where I visited the Stern booth here. For some reason, I think it was the president of Stern came to me while I was filming this particular one and said, no streaming allowed, and sorry, you can't stream. And I tried to protest, being like, I'm not streaming, and I almost wanted to ask him, it's like, do you know what streaming is? And it's like, my camera's not set up, the camera that I used for this was not set up for streaming. I mean, there is a way you could set it up with a webcam, but I didn't have that sort of setup. It was just the camera on a tripod. And so I was able to film up to a point, and he said no streaming, and so I had to turn it off. But again, technically I wasn't streaming, and so I was just filming for later use, like everything else that I do. And honestly, I don't understand why they would do something like that. I mean, I don't know if they were telling anybody else who was filming with their phones or anything like that. And I had a press badge, but yeah, kind of ridiculous to me. And I get it that they have licensors and stuff, but if you're going to license out your property, don't you want people to talk about it? Any company that's so idiotic that they're going to be like, well, we don't want people to be filming this. What century are you living in? You're absolutely asinine. So even then, I don't think that it was first, because Bond's already been announced. It's already been streamed. The Dead Flip streamer guy who now works for Stern has streamed it. You can go out to any arcade and you can film it too. So I just think it's absolutely absurd that they're like this. And Stern's gotten worse about this in recent years. And I get it that they have licensors, but they need to push back and be like, get with the times. Stop being so idiotic. It's like, this is a way for you to promote your IP, to promote your brand. And by telling certain people who aren't pals of Stern or whatever, like I know a couple of guys there that I'm friendly with, and there he is in the side of the camera, just like came out of nowhere, where just suddenly was like, hey, you can't do that. It's just like, drives me crazy. Hi. Memo? Okay. Thank you. Getting back to mall stuff. Yeah, change of ownership. So new owners at the mall. But let me check the chat here. Do I personally prefer a VR style game like that Eraser or Real 360 Real View games like Star Wars Platypod? Yeah, I'm more into the dome screen stuff. As I mentioned in previous VR videos, VR doesn't always agree with my head. Often I don't get vertigo like I used to, but oh, sorry, 1 second. Hi, I can help you. That's broken.
Oh, can I have some quarters?
Quarters, not game tokens?
No.
Okay. There you go.
They give me go.
Yep. But yeah, VR often, after I had LASIK, I stopped getting vertigo when I used VR, but I would still be stuck with a migraine afterwards. And I'm normally not prone to migraines at all, but something about VR kind of does that to me. Now, I didn't really use VR at IAAPA because, again, I was feeling kind of weird and I was losing my voice at the time. And so I was like, well, I don't know if I have something I don't really want to spread anything around. And on top of that, very few booths actually had something to clean the headsets with. And I don't trust those little face mask things that you saw in the Asphalt 9 video, because it still can spread. And on top of that, I hate the face masks because they ruin the immersion. And so it's like, yes, VR can be great for immersive stuff, but at the same time, if you do anything to put between your face and the headset, it ruins it immediately. And so yeah. And Multiballer, no, they did not have a no streaming sign publicly visible. I didn't see one, and I had talked to somebody at Stern prior to that. They knew who I was, they know who I am, and didn't say anything about that. So I really have no idea what it was about. Again, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. No other pinball company I've ever had a problem with. And really, in the past, I've filmed plenty of Stern products. And no, I'm not a big pinball streamer. Most people don't watch me for pinball. And I get that. But still, it's just like, why step on your own foot? But yeah. And Malik, yes, I will be getting to the VR 360 action. So they were in the most recent the video that I posted to YouTube right before this. So I wasn't able to get a ton of footage of your booth, but I will get to it. Just probably will be more towards the end. So apologies on that. But that was one little problem that I had too. I had bought a new battery for my camera prior to IAAPA, but it had a shorter lifespan than I thought it did, and so that sucks. But anyways, let's get back to it. Actually, I guess I should mention this one because it's not on the list there, but American Pinball. And speaking of pinball, these guys saw me film and didn't say a thing. Now, granted, they don't. This is their only licensed game at the moment, Hot Wheels. But I guess Hot Wheels isn't coming to them saying, "Don't allow anybody to film if you don't like them." And that what this was offering at the event was the score bit, which is like Stern's Insider Connected. It allows you to get achievements and track your scores, basically an Xbox Live account for pinball. The nice thing about Scorebit is it works for pretty much any brand. It'll even work for old pinball machines by my understanding. I haven't installed it on any of mine yet, but I might one of these days. And of course, American Pinball, this was really the only thing new that they had was showing Scorebit on Hot Wheels. They didn't have any brand new games, but I know they are working on 2 or 3 new pinball titles, and they've hired a lot of people that have experience in pinball. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But this is Legends of Valhalla, which I had at my other location for a while, and Houdini Master of Mystery, which I like, but it's really hard. Oktoberfest is also cool, but it's ridiculously hard, so you need to be really good at pinball to enjoy Houdini and Oktoberfest. But they seem to have taken that criticism in stride and made Hot Wheels and Legends of Valhalla a bit more forgiving. So, I mean, on VR... I mean, the technology has improved. Like the very first time that I used one, which was at IAAPA, and it was on a motion base, it really made me sick. And I can't remember what the system was. I didn't see them at IAAPA this year. They might have been there, but I overlooked them. And so, yeah, it has improved a bit, but I have a whole video about this as to why I don't think it's the replacement for arcade machines. And so, yeah, there can still be improvements made into it, and it can still contribute to the overall amusement of the industry. But, yeah, let me see if I can do a poll. Alright, it looks like in OBS it doesn't let me do that. Does it let me do it here in the behind the scenes stuff? Let me see. They're very unprofessional. Here we go. Let me start a poll. What is your favorite genre of arcade game? Let's see. How many options can I have? I can only have 4. So racing, shooter with a gun, rhythm, or I guess I'll just have to say other. So there we go. So we'll see how that goes. All right, and next up, moving beyond Bond, and oh, I should mention on Bond, and maybe this is just coming from me feeling a little biased after getting a little chip on my shoulder, but I thought the game was kind of bland, mainly the pro version. The premium version that I was filming there was better, had more stuff in it, but for $7,000 on the pro version, that's about $1,000 more on the premium, didn't feel that exciting. Not for a Bond game. And like with pinball, the way that they design it is to try and make you feel like if it's something about a particular character like James Bond, the designer wants to make you feel like you are James Bond. Or if you're in Jurassic Park, it puts you in the role of an employee at the park. And Jurassic Park did a good job at that, but Bond, at least from the software that I played, it didn't feel like that. Now, granted, this is another issue with pinball in general, is usually when a company like Stern releases the game, the software is far from finished, and so what the game might be like a few revisions later can be totally different. And I do hate that they do that. Now, I get that they probably have to do that so that they don't run out of money and they have to get stuff out there, but it does make for lousy first impressions. And maybe that's the reason why they're like, no filming this game, because it sucks right now and it'll be better later. But again, like I said, it's already out there in public and people can film it anyways. And so, yeah. Alright, so next up is Box Splits and Hit the Green. Let me find that on the list. And as I also mentioned previously to Malik, I'll be covering everything that I possibly can on That Was at IAAPA. Give everybody a fair shake as best I can. Now, I should also mention on Bond before I move on from that is that I was told the 60th anniversary edition will have all the James Bonds and that it's a different design and that it's pretty cool. So we'll see. Give it that. Here's Hit the Green, which had been shown at Amusement Expo for the first time, but as you can see, cool little concept. This was made by Kalkomat, a Polish company which has been making those boxing arcade machines for years and years, and so they know how to do boxing stuff, but they made this cool new concept where if it's green, you hit the target. If it's red, don't hit the target. If you do hit a red target, you lose points. But they also had this Box Blitz at the show, which did not have a coin acceptor on it as far as I could see, but it looked like this was made for gyms that may just want to add something a little more interactive to their overall offering and something different. But if you're an arcade, you would want to go with Hit the Green, of which there's two versions. There's the one that you saw at the beginning of the video, and then there's another one that should show up here in the video in a second. And overall, nice design. Yeah, here's the smaller one. Although this guy that was hitting him, it's like, dude, punch it, hit it. I guess he might be, perhaps he's an operator and like me, cringes whenever somebody hits some of your stuff a little hard, but just how lightly he was tapping it wasn't good enough. So that was kind of amusing. But yeah. So that's Box Blitz, again through Kalkomat, a Polish company, but they do have distributors here in the States. See, next one to find is Bridgeman. This is one problem, is on the list here, things are not alphabetical. It looks like I'm going to have to go turn on my pinball here in a second. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good.
Can we get $3 worth?
Okay. There's 3. 7.
All right, thank you.
Sure, no problem. I'll go turn on the pinballs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Okay. I'll be back. All right.
Regular customer that came in, and I already kind of know what he's going to play, so which is pinball. All right, back to the show. Bridgeman by Slim Luke Games, who I believe is a Polish developer. His website's slimlukegames.com, and he made another game which we'll get to here in a moment. But this was at the Coastal Amusement booth, and works as video, pure video, or Videmption. Video Redemption, I think it's made more for that. Just has, doesn't necessarily have the amount of content that really works for, say, a full-blown video game. But, if you weren't into tickets like me, you could get this and just set it up amusement only. But, pretty interesting concept, very simple, easy to learn, difficult to master. As the line grows and you have to push the button to stop it, and hopefully its length hits the red part. Most likely it'll hit the yellow, or it'll miss the ledge completely and then you lose. And so, yeah, there's that. And you get to the treasure, get the points or the tickets. And so, cool little concept, nice cabinet too with the LEDs and stuff. Not sure if I'll be talking much about the other stuff at the Coastal booth that isn't video games, but like this Slide Up also was a video game that I'll have to get into. Oh yeah, Bumper's the next one, so let's find Bumper on the list. And quite a few of you seem to be very interested in this game. It was one of the more surprising games. I mean, this is also a very simple one. Okay, VR 360 action based out of Brooklyn. My apologies on that one, so thank you for the correction. And so here's Bumper. Here it's like a head-to-head Arkanoid, or head-to-head Breakout. And there have been head-to-head Breakout style games before, but mainly on console. I'm not sure if I can recall one on in arcades, but as you can see, it's a competitive game. It works for 1 or 2 players, but obviously best played with 2. The spinner on it, I think it was, what's that called, the turbo spin or something, seemed commercial quality, didn't feel too loose or anything. Yeah, the other category could cover pinball. Sorry, the poll is blocking some of the questions. Maybe I'll close it here so that I can see the rest here. Yeah, so yeah, Konami's Fighting Mania did work with that, but you know, this has a great presentation. It's a little low-key, probably great for bars, probably great for an arcade like mine. Doesn't take up a lot of space. Only issue is that with games like this, you have to make sure that they're accessible on both sides, and so sometimes, depending on how an arcade is set up, it can be a little difficult to find a spot for that. Like Pac-Man Battle Royale, the cocktail version was always a little bit of a challenge on that, but I liked it. The only thing I could think of to make it better was maybe if it had some sort of announcer or MC, like a character on there that could be saying things to the players or commenting on the play as it goes on, something like that maybe. But yeah, we can always do another poll later. But yeah, overall, for fans of classic gaming, this is a great one to fit into that. And it has these power-ups that appear in the center, and so when you see it like this, you need to hit the button, and then it activates it for you, and oftentimes it'll make it so that your opponent has to face off of something. Like the LR1 made it so that their directions were opposite, and so when they would go right, it would actually move them left, and so it could throw them off. But of course, this was in single play. I think, yeah, here's versus head-to-head sort of thing. I did film one of this that afterwards I realized it was just reflection from the Plinko in it, so I practically couldn't use it. So, oops. But cool little game. And again, this was at the Coastal Amusements booth, but oddly enough, on their website, they don't have this listed still. Same thing with Bridgeman, so I don't know when they're going to. So hopefully soon if they do plan on carrying it, but I've seen a lot of interest on it. I don't know how much interest Coastal themselves might have seen on it, but anyways. And yeah, as SB95 mentions there, Martin, the games on exA-Arcadia are just cartridges. You just plug them in and they work. Pretty straightforward, which is nice. All right, next up is Carnival Cups Crane, again by an Arcade Heroes advertiser. As I mentioned at the beginning, please patronize these advertisers. They help the site stay open, which is nice. And where did I put Touch Magix? Here we go. So they've been advertising on the Arcade Heroes site for a while. They're mainly based out of India. But this was their newest idea. So they've had this redemption game called Carnival Cups for a while, and you know, they've done several redemption games. The SpaceWarp 66, which is actually sitting right here across from the camera, it works as a video-only game. That's how I have it set up, and it's been doing decently well. But they introduced this new version of Carnival Cups at IAAPA 2022, which the larger version, this is a static, this guy's a static image, but his hands move. It's on the screen, but it's basically just a, you know, like it says, Carnival cups, and so you have to pick which ball is under which cup. They move them around, do the little sleight of hand shuffle, and then you have to pick which one it is. And the further along you get, the more points you earn. And so they've also integrated that into a crane machine, and so you can win more chances at the claw, or you can win tickets. And so I had 2 different modes. And that'll show up again in a moment. But they also had this linked play for MegaBlaster and SpaceWarp 66, so allowing locations, if they want 2 of them, to offer more tickets if they win. And so as you can see up there, you know, the big bonus, and becomes more competitive. I do think the competitive aspect makes more sense on SpaceWarp than it does on MegaBlaster. And so got somebody calling my phone. No. Might, I'll have to look. It's been a while. Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. You're welcome. Bye. Sorry, I got to do something on my phone here. But so as I mentioned, so the new thing, the real new thing from Touch Magix was taking that Carnival Cups game and blending it with a crane machine, which is a pretty cool idea. I mean, I know he doesn't appear to be in chat, but Blake, who is a regular Arcade Heroes reader, he's a big fan of crane machines, but personally I've just never been able to really care about them. To me, they're all basically the same thing with a different facade on the front, and you know, they've added things like LEDs, but still it's like a crane's a crane, you know. And so what racing game? This one? I can't remember now what I was talking about. Space racing game. I think it was this one. Yeah. So, oh yeah, it was this one. SpaceWarp 66. So this game was initially developed as a redemption game, but they said it did have a non-redemption mode, and so I grabbed one. I guess I should show you here. So there it is. And yeah, it's been doing all right. I wouldn't mind having a second one. Like this linked play that's happening in the video, it's well, it's not a racing game when it's by itself, but when it's linked, it becomes a racing game. And so as you can see in the video here, as long as the 2 people go, you are essentially racing to see who can get the most through the most gates. And so in that regard, it becomes a racing game. And I mean, it's kind of even when it's in single player, it's got certain elements which you could call racing-ish. There's a classic Atari game that was one of my favorites growing up called Enduro by Activision. And kind of like that in a way, or I guess Turbo would be the arcade version by Sega. And so yeah, that's Carnival Cups, Crane, and Street. Next up is Crazy Rafting. I think round 1, if you have a round 1 USA, then there's a good chance that they will have SpaceWarp. I know the one in Salt Lake City has a SpaceWarp, maybe 2. And I've seen some other Touch Magic games pop up at different FECs out there. Sorry, that phone call I got, it's like I need a picture right away, and so it's like I gotta look through all my stuff and find that. There we go. Sorry, 1 second here. And then what was the next one I was looking up? I'm already forgetting because I'm getting pulled in different directions. Crazy Rafting by Wallop and Sega. technically all developed by Wallop, a Chinese company, but being sold in the States or the West, Europe, States, in via Sega Amusements. Sorry, one more here and then I'll get into this. So obviously this will remind you exactly of Namco's old Rapid River, which I think was 97, 96, 97, around there. At the FEC I worked at as a teenager, they had one. I don't recall if the back seat had this effect in it or not, but that was cool. The software wasn't perfect. It might have been Unreal Engine 4. I'm not sure. Some of the animation, it wasn't the worst animation I'd seen on certain things. Like, I guess just the rafting stuff itself is a little bit stiff sometimes, but overall it was fine. And the concept's pretty much the same thing as Rapid River. What was funny is while I was standing there filming it one of these times, Frank Cosentino from Namco stopped by and said, "Hey, that looks familiar." And then we had a little chat about it, and some other things. But they've put their own twist on it. I think this has more content on it than Rapid River did. That's one criticism of mine from some 90s Namco games like Tokyo Wars. I loved Tokyo Wars, but it only had 2 stages. And it was just way too short. And I don't remember playing Rapid River a whole lot. Obviously this looks a lot better than the 97 one did and stuff. But again, I think pretty sure it has more stuff to it. And so, yeah, you could call SpaceWarp a spiritual successor to Stun Runner in a way. You don't get to blow stuff up, but still similar concept. I know Jeff Minter of Llamasoft had found that video and liked it. Like Jeff Minter's really he's a programmer responsible for Space Giraffe, Tempest 2000, 3000, and 4000. He's working on the new EXA game as well. But he's really into tube-like things, tube shooters and concepts like that. I know he found a video of that and enjoyed it. So, yeah. So, sorry, got really distracted there. And so, only criticism I really had on this one is every time I tried to play it was usually at the beginning of the show, and for some reason it wouldn't let me play. I don't know if it needed to be coined up or something. It was kind of strange. But, so I didn't get a chance to try this one out. But as you can see there's all the different routes, which again, I think that offers you more stuff to come across than Rapid River did. So again, that one's available now. I just don't know if anybody's picked it up yet. Here's the next one, is one that has garnered a bit of attention since it was announced. That would be Dead Heat Unleashed, the sequel to Namco's 2010 Dead Heat arcade racing game. Yeah, I mean, Wahlap, I'm not sure who might have been the... Wahlap, I don't know if they do a lot of development themselves. I think they mainly do hardware stuff, whereas the software is usually designed by IGS. And I didn't see any IGS stuff on Crazy Rafting, and so it might have been a different Chinese developer that worked on that one. It might have been Wahlap themselves. I need to talk with them to find out for sure. But yeah, I agree. They're not the greatest graphics. I mean, certainly Dead Heat Unleashed looks a lot better than Crazy Rafting does. But I guess it's one of those things where they might figure, this is more about the experience than it is about how it looks. And so, yeah. But yeah, here's Dead Heat Unleashed. This has been designed by the Maximum Tune team, and so I guess taking a break from Maximum Tune 6 and 7 stuff to be working on this. And yes, there will be news about Maximum Tune 7 coming next year. I can confirm that. But this one, it's If you want a more casual version of Maximum Tune, this is your game. Personally, when it comes to casual racers, it's not my favorite. I do like games that have shortcuts and maybe a little bit more over-the-top stuff when they're trying to be casual. Like if they're trying to be serious, then I love Maximum Tune. Have nothing against that at all, but I mean, you have to admit on some of the Maximum Tune courses, like the very first one where it's basically just going straight and then you're just reading story that's going on, it's kind of dull, not very exciting. But you know, building up your car is more exciting, and there are it's Maximum Tune Cruise and Blast in a way, but Cruise and Blast has more over-the-top stuff going on in it than Dead Heat does. And so the main fun thing about Dead Heat is that there's a lot more crowding going on, and that's how you build your meter. And kind of like you saw there, like when you hit another car, there's that spark and it goes into the ultimate heat meter, and so that's how you get your boost. So the more that you smash up against other cars, and then there's a little bit of Cruise and Blast there where you run into stuff and they fly. It's just not quite as over the top as like Cruise and Blast gets. But the graphics on this look really good. I mean, there's a lot of shaded areas, particularly like on this Hawaii track, and there's a few other tracks where there's a bit of shading going on, but then you get these vibrant scenes where, you know, this looks a lot nicer. And I guess there is some over the top set pieces there, you know, with paragliders and balloons and stuff, and so you know, it has that going for it. Just again, I guess I wouldn't mind seeing a shortcut or two. Oh, it has Aloha cut into the side of the hill there. I hadn't noticed that before. So overall, I love the graphics on this one. This will be exclusive to arcades. Dead Heat never came out. One really cool thing in this are going through the tunnels. I love that effect of the different light sources, as well as how it gets really bright right before you get to the end of the tunnel. And so hopefully I have to imagine that Maximum Tune 7 will look like this, if not exactly like this. Like this might be the same engine they're using, maybe a little bit better, I don't know. But overall, yeah, and if you haven't caught it already, I've filmed almost every track on this, and so that was the Hawaii one, and throughout the playlist I have a bunch of other Dead Heat Unleashed courses. I think I have one more to go, which is Chicago, but as far as I can tell, 'cause people have asked me this, are these just remastered courses from Dead Heat, so like when it's Chicago or London? I can't remember because it's been so long since I played Dead Heat, but I did ask Namco about it, and they said, because the original Dead Heat, they made all the courses based on full-blown maps of the actual places where they were based, but on this one they took more liberties, and so it's a little bit more mixed with fantasy. And yeah, that's another thing too with Dead Heat Unleashed is having that single lap. You know, that's very much like cruising, where it's point A to point B instead of closed circuit courses. I wouldn't mind it if there was either an option to offer laps on each one, or if not an option, just make it so that there's maybe a few courses that have the closed circuit laps. I wouldn't mind that. Now this could still change, and in fact that's unless the games are actually shipping now, then you can probably expect to see changes in certain things. Now granted, looks like the tracks are basically done, so I don't know if they would be able to completely redesign the tracks, but yeah, I wouldn't guess on it, and so we'll see when it comes out next year on this one. Hi. 425. Here you go. And if there's anything off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on. Yeah. Any rumors of an Avatar game coming? Not that I've heard of. Funny thing is that Avatar Pinball is what caused Stern to start having competition, because it sold so poorly that Jack Guarnieri, I think, sorry if I butchered that, He was selling pinball machines, and he said Avatar was the worst selling machine he had ever come across. And that's when he decided to create his own pinball manufacturing company, Jersey Jack Pinball, because he was just tired of Stern having no competition and just being really lazy with their designs. And so you could thank Avatar, the original movie, for that. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the license on that might be too much to do, but I also do imagine that VR would be the most likely chance. Pinball or VR. I don't know if there's. Hi.
Turn around, go say versus, okay?
Yeah, I meant to start the stream earlier in the day when it wasn't busy-ish, but oh well. And so hopefully you can all hear me okay, especially with the pinball going on in the background, as the pinball does get a little bit loud. All right, next up is Dinosaur Era. Let's find that one on the list. I think it's a little bit later. Let's see. There we go. So as mentioned in the video, this is a water gun game where you're spraying real water at the screen, and it does have a collection system so that it recollects some of the water, but there's a lot of splash that happens. There's also this mist effect where it uses up the water, and so okay, good, thanks. It loses water over time, and so locations kind of need to be on top of these games to replenish the water. But I've also heard from technicians where they have these types of games, and funny enough, right there it says add water. But you have to replace a filter inside of them, and if you don't stay on top of that, it can smell. And so that's one reason why you haven't seen a ton of these water games, because when the first one to do this, called Iceman, was a huge success. You've probably seen it out there, but the graphics on that were absolutely terrible, and that's one where I'd gladly admit, yeah, that's worse than a cell phone game, because like the frame rate was 15 to 20 frames a second, and they reused assets from Plants vs. Zombies, or they made clones. But this one, it's essentially the same idea, but as you can tell, much better frame rate. As far as I could tell, 60 frames a second, and dinosaurs and stools to sit on, and 4 players. And so basically the same kind of concept, just shooting dinosaurs instead. And shooting dinosaurs is basically a guaranteed win. I have a Jurassic Park here that you might have seen earlier when I turned the camera around, and it still makes good money. And I mean, I'm kind of surprised you haven't seen more dinosaur games in the industry, just because it's so easy. Kids love shooting dinosaurs, and it's a little more interesting to me than shooting zombies, just because zombies, it's, you know, been done to death. Get it? But dinosaurs, you know, you have all these varieties, and you can make them colorful and all that stuff, and kids or adults don't have any problem with shooting them. And so if Jurassic Park was just called Dinosaur Shooter, it would still make tons of money. Obviously, the Jurassic Park license is one you want, but you know, you don't have to have that. Yeah. So it's Dinosaur Era by Coastal Amusements. Next up is Donut Dodo Do, or Donut Dodo Do, I was told. Is it kind of threw me off because the game voiceover said Donut Dodo Do. But afterwards, Eric at exA-Arcadia said it's supposed to be Donut Dodo Do, so it would be fixed. Here we go. So this is also coming to the exA-Arcadia. Now, this is a very early version, and so not much on it had changed compared to the Steam version, and I think it's on the Switch, and probably the PlayStation and Xbox as well, basically on everything. But what's really great about it is that it's like a bunch of platformer games from the early 80s, like Popeye, Donkey Kong, Mappy, Mario Brothers, all that kind of combined into one. My favorite thing, though, on it is that going up ladders is super fast. Like, if you've played any of those games from the early 80s, usually it was a slog to go up and down the ladder, and oftentimes the enemies could catch you. And this one kind of threw me off because of just how fast that it was, and hopefully not Baby Shark. But another thing is that's going to change on this one, and so they've already rolled out a page for this on exA-Arcadia's website, exa.ac. But they've hired an artist who's worked for Capcom, who's worked on the Rockman or Mega Man series. And so he's redone some of the art, which will show up on the sides. The final version will also have two-player support, like simultaneous two-player like Mario Brothers. And so there'll be a female chef as well as this chef here. I guess another one to throw out there is Burger Time. This is kind of like Burger Time meets Donkey Kong meets Popeye. But yeah, you just have to collect all the donuts on the level, and then you get to the big donut at top. And then you move on to the next level. And I have to avoid his flame poop, but I don't think there's any way to get it past that toilet. But very fun game. Definitely look forward to the final two-player version of it. And that was a last-second save right there. But definitely takes a little bit of skill to play. But as far as I'm aware, this will also be a affordable release, as in it'll be under $1,000 for the cartridge kit. So that'll be nice too. So if you have an exA-Arcadia or you have an arcade and you want to add something that's plays like a classic arcade game but is something new and fresh, then this is the way to go. And I was arguing with somebody online. It was like, well, this is already in arcades. It's on the arcade and stuff. And it's like, again, that's the same version you can get on PC. It hasn't been specifically tailored to the arcade format like this has, and this will have those extra stuff. Yes, getting chased by a climbing hungry toilet seat's a little weird. I don't know what that has to do with anything else, but it's fine. You know, early 80s arcade games often had weird stuff in them that didn't make much sense. It's like, why is Pac-Man being chased by ghosts? You know, whatever. It's still fun. All right. And so that will probably be coming spring next year. Now, back to Sega. Whoops. Oh, I guess this is going straight there instead of me finding it on the list. So this was announced prior to the show. I have to really appreciate them doing something different. I mean, when you think Sega and racers, you always think something like Daytona, Scud Racer, something with a car. And so this one ditches the cars and goes for drones. And so has 4 courses. I will have to, I think I might have some extra footage of this that I hadn't posted yet. But that's one problem. When you shoot all these videos at IAAPA, and I have something between 200 to 300 files, sometimes there's things you overlook. But sure, there's always Sonic, and that wouldn't be a racing game unless you get Sonic Racing, which there was the Sonic Racing All-Stars turned into an arcade game back in 2011, but wasn't on the market for super long. But the cabinet on this one is fantastic. Like I mentioned earlier, the LED effects are just top-notch. I really like what they've done with them. My only complaint about this game is that the controls needed some work. Now, I did film I think the producer of the game, Ogashi, the guy who created Ghost Squad and Jumbo Safari and Ocean Hunters, and has been involved with many things, Mission Impossible Arcade. But let me find that one, or actually that's not there. Let's see, where is that? So when I heard about this, I was like, I should take my little drone with me, which, you know, did take up a little space in my backpack, but just to film one game. But it was worth it, I think, I hope. I mean, this video actually hasn't been watched by many people there, but yeah, so prior to the show opening, I was able to go in and do some recording with my drone. And now, unfortunately, my drone doesn't have any microphone to record sound with. And so that's where I had to add some music on this one. But on the left is Ogashi. On the right's another Sega employee. I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. But in watching them play, I noticed that they didn't really have any issues in controlling the game. Now, it's not... I mean, it's just fine with a joystick. It sounds like from one of the releases that they did try other ways, other control schemes on this, and they found that a single joystick worked better than, say, like 2 joysticks. And so, unfortunately, I know this is criticism of a lot of our modern arcade games, but you know, sometimes dumbing it down works. It's what makes money. Whereas having something that really goes for the skill aspect, it's too hard for most players, and then the game doesn't make anything. And if a game doesn't make money, it doesn't get released because it's not going to sell. And you know, these companies are spending millions of dollars on developing the software and manufacturing the hardware, and you know, it's always a big risk to come out with any new game. And so that's where you want to have it go through testing. But like I said, it seems like they have played the game enough where they have the skill to handle it just fine. But for me, it just could have used some extra tweaking or extra calibration, because it just, when I played it, it seemed like I was either going up or I was going down, and it was really hard to find the sweet spot. And so maybe if that was just a little more forgiving, it'd be fine. I like the graphics on it. It's always hard to convey graphics from a video camera to a screen because there's extra bloom that you don't see in person. But yeah, I mean, I did expect something to happen with the trigger, like there would be combat. Maybe they tested that and that didn't work out very well. I'm not sure. But, you know, it was fine. It's fun and everything. It's also one of the cheaper racing games on the market right now when you have stuff that's hitting as far as 50,000. The price I heard on this one was is below 15. It's above 10,000, unfortunately. Like most everything on the market these days is above 10K. But I want to say 12, 13,000 per cabinet, which, you know, before if this had been released before the pandemic, it probably would have been in the range of 7,000 to 8,000 instead. But it's unfortunately the times we live in there. So that's Drone Racing Genesis. I don't think this has been released yet. I think it's coming soon. Whoops, that's my LinkedIn. Trying to find my... Oh, I guess I shut down. Got away from the post to stay on track. Sorry about that. All right. We're done with the D's, so now we get to EXA-Arcadia, the ARC-1, which I mistakenly called this the EXA ARC-1 Cabinet, so my apologies on that. I also was recently on a video with Joe at Indie Arcade Wave where I made the mistake in saying that this was done by this cabinet has been made by a third party. It's actually made by EXA themselves. And so, not sure why I got that information wrong. I know better. But so this is the new cabinet for exA-Arcadia platforms that they are selling out there. There are some locations that already have one. I heard that they all got a great response at IAAPA. You can change out the control panel. You can buy it with a 2-player or a 1-player or a 4-player control panel, but later on you can buy another one if you want and easily swap it out. And likewise, you can take the monitor on these and in about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how experienced you are, you can change the orientation of the monitor from horizontal to vertical. And so that's that's a pretty cool aspect of it. Game menu allows you to get to the main menu on the game, because if you have more than one cartridge installed in it, it'll allow you to go to the menu system and pick one of the cartridges. And I guess I had a lot of people asking me on the quality of this. Some saying, oh, that looks cheap or something, because I guess it's just thin. But I mean, from all the play that I did on it, I did not find any issues. All these controls are Suzo Hap controls, the same kind of joysticks that you find on a vast majority of arcade systems out there. Every time I've talked with EXA, they always seem to be very focused on quality. And I know they're not an advertiser of mine. I know I shill for them a lot, but just because I believe in what they're doing and bringing to the market. And one of the biggest things that they do, as I was just talking about the pricing, like most games that you've seen up to this point are above the $10,000 price. EXA is one of the very, very few options on today's market that is under $6,000. Now they have a few different distributors, so there might be a distributor that's charging $6,000 for one of these. I'm not sure, but still, this is again like the modern Neo Geo, and nobody else is doing this. And so I know that there's some criticisms out there. Some might be valid, some are way overblown, and they're doing it. And so if you think that you can do better and you want to make your own PC with a cartridge system, then you can go for it. But you'll find that it's a very difficult business to be in. And so, these are 32-inch displays, which again, it's true that there aren't many to find. I mean, they were 1080p from what I recall them saying, but they looked better than 1080p, and so I know whatever panels they got were pretty high quality, and obviously have low input lag. And that's one thing too that EXA really focuses on that I don't hear almost anybody else talking about, and that's input lag. And they do everything that they can to have the lowest input lag in the industry. And so a lot of their games have just crazy good input lag. Like on your consoles, you're usually looking at 4 to 5 frames of input lag, and most of the time they're just not focused on that aspect at all. But if input lag is your thing, if you're that hardcore of a gamer, exA-Arcadia nails it, and you can feel it. Like even if you can't visibly notice the difference in input lag, like with their fighting games, you just notice how smooth they are, or their shoot 'em up games too. And that's another reason why I like exA-Arcadia, is because of them. We're getting types of genres that just none of these other companies like Rothrills or Sega or Bandai Namco will ever touch again. Like there's been a lot of lamentations out there about Tekken 8, because Street Fighter 6 arcade was announced. Chances of it coming to the States are very low, other than Round 1 USA. For the most, like Tekken 8's not coming to arcades as far as I've heard. But if you want fighting games, you want shoot 'em up games, and they're even looking at doing more rhythm games. Like over on this cabinet here, they had Noise Arcuda, which is a shoot 'em up / rhythm game. Platformer games, no other company is going to touch these things. And so, it's just, no, Street Fighter 6 Arcade, it's announced through Taito. They're handling it, but the reason why I'm not interested in one is, from what I've heard, it's 10,000 or more for it, and very, very little is different on it between it and the console version. And to me, as an arcade operator, spending $10,000, it's a waste of money. Capcom screwed me on Street Fighter 4. When they announced the arcade edition, initially Yoshinori Ono said, or claimed, that we're not going to bring this to this version to consoles because they already have the console version, and so you'll have this. But the Street Fighter fan base can't have that. They can't allow arcades to have anything exclusive, and so they cried and whined so much that Capcom relented within a few months and then released that same version of consoles. And so my $10,000 investment for a kit for just a computer was immediately wasted, because the day that it came out on consoles, 99% of the guys that had been coming daily to play the game stopped coming. Most of them I never saw again. And so it's like there's no loyalty there, and there's no benefit to having something that's in consoles that's like this, because like, the difference between an arcade and a console game these days, there's virtually nothing when it's a joystick-based game. Now, with something like Walking Dead, you get that different controller. With a racing game, you get the racing controls, and so that's all different. And so, like, if Walking Dead came to consoles, or like when Cruise and Blast came to consoles, I didn't see a huge drop-off in earnings. I have noticed that Cruise and Blast is doing a little less than it used to prior to that, but it wasn't this jump off a cliff thing that I saw with Street Fighter 4. I mean, I'm not kidding. I was charging 75 cents for Street Fighter 4 to start, and I think it was 25 cents to continue. And within a month and a half that the game was exclusive to arcades, it made almost $3,000. The week that came out on arcades, I had to drop it to 25 cents because I couldn't get anybody to play it at 75. And then after that, most weeks it made less or the same, or maybe just a few coins more than my old Street Fighter 2. And so, yeah, this is where I just haven't cared about fighters, because for an operator like myself, I don't have millions of dollars. I don't even have hundreds of thousands of dollars. I have to be very careful about my investments, and I'm not going to invest in something that's going to screw me over. And that's exactly why I didn't pay attention to Street Fighter 5. I had somebody contact me, hey, you want Street Fighter 5 for $10,000? It's like, nope. And same thing with Street Fighter 6. I don't care, because, I mean, yeah, you could do that, but the problem is that most players don't care. Like, yes, I agree that playing any fighter in the arcade is better because you have somebody there with you and you play in a different way. Usually you are more respectful. I've actually never had a fight break out from a fighting game disagreement, but still, for most players, they don't care. They're fine just playing it at home, playing it online with lousy lag and all that, and so it doesn't make it worth it. And now, if the game was $2,000-$3,000, then sure, that would be a little bit easier to swallow. But my Street Fighter 4 arcade never paid itself off. And so that's where I'm jaded on that. I'm sorry, got on a tangent here. I know I've told this story before, but yeah, it just, you screw your operator. Thank you, guys. If arcade developers screw their operators over like these Japanese companies like Capcom and sometimes Bandai Namco do, then we don't want to buy their stuff anymore. Like, I have no interest in anything Capcom because I don't trust them. But anyways, moving on to other stuff that is less likely to come to consoles, or if it does, like I said, it doesn't cause that big of an issue, is Fast and Furious Arcade. And so, speaking of cost, right here, that's $100,000 right there. And so this one is way too rich for my blood. But this has been made for places like Dave & Buster's, Round 1 USA, Main Event, Family Entertainment Centers. And so it has these two screens. Now, I've heard a bit of criticism on that. It's hard to explain. When you're sitting in the seat and you have that there, no, you're not staring at the top screen, but there's something about it that creates this immersion. It's almost like the dome screens do. It's like, does the dome screen really change how the game plays? No, but it does it causes this odd immersive feel, almost like you have a VR headset on, but you don't have anything on your face. And that was the same kind of feeling that I got from playing Fast and Furious Arcade. And so, I mean, to me, I think it would be kind of cool if they were able to get like a vertical screen, or like what, ultra wide vertical screen instead, maybe, for that. But it's probably more economical just to have these two 65-inch 4K TVs on there. But I have a different video that's a little more focused on the single game. I also might need to go grab a drink here soon because my throat's starting to, gonna lose my voice again. But, this has motion, this has surround sound, you can link up to 8, which would be crazy. Has a QR code stat system, which I sort of show in this video. But graphically, it looks great. It looks better than Cruise and Blast does by a bit. Better lighting effects, some nice reflections on the car. I mean, yeah, it's not Gran Turismo, the latest one or whatever, but it still looks really nice. And has licensed cars. Everybody loves licensed cars. Although one thing that I was told at the show that was very interesting, because it's like back in the 90s we had damage modeling, right, with like Daytona or Daytona 2, and it was great where you could see the cars all smashed up and the bumper scraping on the road. But you'll notice that practically no racing game does that anymore. And why is that? Well, I was told directly that the reason why is because of the licensors. The car companies absolutely refuse to allow to have damage modeling on their cars. They don't want people to see their cars or smash up their cars virtually, or take pictures of that and share it around. Now it's like, of course, I'm sure there's mechanic shops that have tons of pictures of stuff like that too. But when it comes, that's one problem with licensing, is you have to bow to their demands, otherwise you won't get the license. And so that's the reason why we don't have damage modeling in racing games anymore. And now if you had a game that had non-licensed cars in it, you could do that, but then you might not get anybody wanting to play it, because everybody just wants to play real world cars. But anyways, it's the gameplay on this is just what you would expect. It's Fast and Furious, point A to point B racing, very over the top, lots of jumps and things like that, lots of things blowing up in your face, actual rockets being launched at you. I do like how they changed this from just, you're racing, to missions. Now, I haven't watched a Fast and Furious film since I think the second one, and even then I barely remember it. But I mean, I guess through the ether of memes, you kind of get the idea. I know there's something about family constantly being said in there, and this has nothing to do with family, other than family entertainment, I guess. But I guess it's always like spy missions or some sort of over-the-top mission going on. So that seems to actually come from the films for the first time, because that's been one thing that I've always thought a little weird about Fast and Furious, is it has basically nothing to do with the films at all, other than you're racing cars and it has the logo. But at least with the missions, it actually seems to have that. Now, one thing that seems to have been removed from the game that was seen in testing was a money aspect, which also used to, I think the original Fast and Furious and maybe Tokyo Drift had a money thing where you were earning money and then you could use that virtual money in game to upgrade your car. But there was a picture of this game on test where it had that, and seems to have been removed. But here I am trying to use the QR code system. It's not the most intuitive, but I guess it saves money over doing a pin pad system, which nobody ever uses anyways. And yeah, that's true. That's a good point. SP95 is that a lot of kids are used to, vertical portrait mode, TikTok world and Instagram and all that crap. That they're used to that. It's just visually, biologically, we're not really used to looking at things in a vertical sense. We're used to looking at things like this. Like, personally, when I film things with my phone, I always am turning it, because I don't really like vertical videos, but I'm an old codger, so that's probably why. Right, moving on. Football Frenzy. This one is interesting because almost every time I go to a trade show, I'm hanging out with some of these developers, and they often will talk sports. They obviously know sports. I'm not a big sports guy. I watched a little bit of the World Cup here. Saw Brazil lose. Used to live in Brazil, so that's where I learned some things about soccer that I otherwise didn't know, but I must have overlooked this. Where is Football Frenzy? But it amazes me. Oh, here we go. how many people in the industry know their stuff about sports, but the arcade industry hasn't really seen a good sports game, like a American football game or a baseball game or a basketball game in years. And so this is kind of the first thing since Madden Season 2 that Global VR did like in 2007. But this uses VR. And it doesn't use an NFL license, but I don't think it needs one. I mean, maybe that would add a little bit to it, but I don't think it would be necessary. And so you're basically just being a quarterback. And there's things about the defensive lines there where you're trying to throw it to the right guy within the end zone there. I'll probably get the terminology wrong. I've watched football before, but I never really studied it, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But I just know you're a quarterback, and you have to throw it there. So this cabinet, it was designed by VRStudios and licensed to a company called VRStudios. And so VRStudios calls it the Monolith, VRStudios calls it the Fury. And what this was done was to allow a cheaper version for a VR game to show up in arcades. I've mentioned this criticism before, though. It's criticism not of the game itself, but of the cabinet design. One is that the controllers and the headset, particularly the headset, can be dropped on the floor. And just to me, that it blows my mind that they did it like that, but I don't know that there's any other way to do it without the headset being attached to a gantry. And so, but yeah, just having operating an arcade, seeing how often my light guns get dropped on the floor and sometimes it destroys them, knowing that a very expensive VR headset, the same thing could happen to that. There's that. But there's also the issue of, I know it happened on one of the videos I shot where, I think it might have been this one, where he didn't realize how close he was to the front of the cabinet and hit the cabinet with the controller. Didn't break anything, but yeah, overall this is kind of a generic VR cabinet. It's easy to change out the artwork, easy to change out the game. But again, I definitely commend VRStudios for creating a VR arcade football game. And again, I'm just blown away that we don't have something like NFL Blitz or NBA Jam from the other major creators. Or just something like this, where it doesn't necessarily need to have the license, but it just does something with the sport that puts you in the role of somebody within that sport and allows you to simulate who they are, like a quarterback, and go from there. So, yeah, don't know why they don't touch that, but that's Football Frenzy by VRStudios, and that was at the Creative Works booth. Next up, Galaxy Ranger. Or Galaxy Rangers. So this is basically a poor man's Halo. So designed by Chinese company Ace Amusements and sold in the United States through Coastal Amusements. I know this game has actually been available in the UK and in Europe for a little while now through UDC, United Distribution Company. The guns seem nice. I kind of didn't really understand what the point of the little thing here is. Maybe to help it so that it wouldn't drop on the floor, like I talked about being a problem. So that must be what it is. But you can definitely see the Halo influence there. But again, not Halo. You're not on a ring world, as far as I could tell. But yeah, kind of a generic light gun game. Graphics actually not bad on this one. And I mean, sometimes Chinese-made games, like one very noticeable thing, are like animations are really janky. And while this one wasn't perfect, it was actually a lot better than what I'm accustomed to seeing. And, these guys aren't the Covenant. Non-Covenant guys. But one cool aspect of this, they borrowed from Time Crisis 3. And that's where you could pick up different weapons. And then by pushing a button on the side of the gun, it would switch your weapon type. So that was cool. And you would gather ammunition throughout. And so, yeah, I mean, for, like you say, SB95, for a Chinese-made game, I was actually impressed with this, because I've seen much worse. And so this one definitely seems like they're, at least for this company, they're really learning, what it is, what aspects of a light gun game work for it. It has a total of 8 levels, so it also seems like it's a fairly long game. But I didn't play through all of that, so I'm not sure exactly how long. But again, this one is not by IGS, by Ace Amusement, and so good on them for creating something that's, while it's a derivative of something else. I mean, really, almost everything is a derivative of something else at this point. The influence of Star Wars and Star Trek are hard to avoid, or Halo, or anything else that's super popular. And so, I mean, maybe in a way you could also say this has a little bit of Avatar influence. So this maybe consider this almost like an Avatar game, but just a lot more violent. I don't know. But that's Galaxy Rangers at the Coastal Amusement booth. This one is on their website, so definitely selling it now. And that one will do ticket redemption, but as you saw there, it'll work just fine with non-tickets. Oh, this is one that I did forget to post. I do have footage of this one, Golden Mace. So this is a VR game. They had a brand new cabinet for it. And it's kind of a weird game because you're like at a fortress, and orcs or goblins are being thrown at you, and you have to grab them. But you can also grab weapons and stab them and stuff. And so, like I said, it's kind of a strange concept, and it's VR only. But so I'm sorry to Boxblaster that I didn't get that up yet, but I will. Probably by tomorrow. Guns N' Roses. So, in a company that did not tell me to stop streaming. Where are you? Oh, here we go. Sometimes I guess my thumbnails are too generic. Here is Guns N' Roses, Not in This Lifetime. Now, I'm familiar with some Guns N' Roses songs, but I've never bought an album of theirs, and so not what you would call a big fan. But yeah, very nice looking game. That's one thing you can't fault Jersey Jack for. Is making very nice looking games. Now, of course, the price on their games is a bit higher than Stern, and as I've talked about many times, one issue with pinball is that as the inflation and the cost of goods have skyrocketed in some cases, it's kind of making new pinball untenable to me. I just cannot see myself spending $10,000 on a pinball machine or more, just because a game that's already $5,000 takes 5 years to pay itself off. Good, how are you? Good. If there's anything off. What's that?
Well, this reminds me of the good old days.
All right, yep, that's why we're here. So I think Guns N' Roses is something like 12,000, somewhere around there. Maybe I'm thinking Toy Story 4, which is to the side there. But yeah, for pinballer, there's no pinball machine that I can think of that I'm looking forward to right now, because again, just the price kills it for me. But maybe one day I'll get to a point where it'll work out, or I'll just get them when they're used. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I've had one Jersey Jack game dialed in, and I loved the game. It actually made the least amount of money out of all my new games, and that was too sad for me, and so I ended up trading it for something else. And so, I mean, maybe on a trade. Thank you. Maybe on a trade, I would grab something like a Toy Story 4 or Guns N' Roses, but otherwise, I mean, the presentation on this one is fantastic. It's to make you feel like you're at a Guns N' Roses concert, and I think they nailed that. The flow of it seemed pretty good, and I didn't encounter any issues. The animations were great. It has a bunch of their songs. So, I mean, if you're a fan of Guns N' Roses, then there you go. You know, it's fan service. And like you can see there, they even have drumsticks, real drumsticks for a ramp. And so, yeah, that's Guns N' Roses. Glad to bring back some good old day YouTube here. I mean, yeah, I don't watch a lot of other streamers. I mean, maybe occasionally, but like I'm not into like entitled or established titles or raid Shadow Legends and all that stuff. And I get it. You got to find ways to make extra money. So I don't hold that against anybody, but I guess I don't copy a lot of the other stuff that people do and just give you the stuff raw. I'm losing my voice while I'm at it. All right. Very unprofessional. I don't have a producer to pull all this stuff up for me. Halo Fireteam Raven Assault model. And so I didn't hear them say this, but my guess out of it was I noticed that they aren't really listing the other cabinets for Halo anymore, and I think the reason why is it's become too expensive to do those cabinets at the prices that they were doing them for, and so they had like the enclosed cabinets, and so they came up with this, which I like to call the Assault model, because it has a really nice recreation of the assault rifle from Halo, and so obviously it's not a one-to-one replica. You have to make some adaptations to work in an arcade, but the software itself is all the same, and so it's a fantastic looking game, all 4K, 60 frames a second. Probably used the same engine that was used on something like the Xbox One or Xbox Series, and it's just very nice. I mean, this is the main difference on this one, is that, you know, you have this gun now. They were talking that there would be a 2-player version coming along. This 4-player version, they were saying, won't be available until next spring. I'm not really sure if there will be other changes made to the cabinet between now and then. I guess so. Hard to say why the delay, but it also could have to do with production. Like, I know one thing with Fast and Furious is they could only make like 500 of them to start, and then just had to see how things would go from demand. And so that's also another thing. Like, they're taking orders for this right now, but they're probably just seeing where demand is to come up with the right amount of cabinets, because it's very expensive to build these things. And so that was one thing that I was told at the show, is like, when we develop a game, so there's the cost of software, which can usually cost a few $1 million. But what a lot of people don't realize is that for us to go into manufacture or into production, we have to buy all of the parts, like everything, the wood, the screws, the TVs, the shell casings, the LEDs, every single item on each cabinet has to be purchased in advance, and we have to place a minimum order, usually like 100 units or more, and that's going to cost a few to several $1 million by itself. And so that's where these companies have to be careful how they spend things. So yeah, let's see. Ooh, here's one that I can't show, and that's Hot Pink Club. Let me grab the flyer for it. So Hot Pink Club, yeah, this is for above 18. So I have a video of this on my channel, but you might not have seen it because I had to put the above 18 restriction on it, and so it won't broadcast it out to people unless they have it set up right, I guess. But I did get a flyer from IAAPA where it showed the Hot Pink Club cabinet, and so this is X-rated adult gaming brought back. And so they work with exA-Arcadia. In fact, the Hot Pink platform, the computer looks, it is an exA-Arcadia, but it's painted pink, and it has their branding on it. So I'm not 100% sure how the business relationship works there. I know that the principal guys behind this are in Europe. I think they said Norway or the Netherlands. I can't remember. It started with an N. But yeah, this the back of this shows the 4 games that they have: the Badass Babes Kiss, Rumblestorm X, Shakuga the X Communication, which is a game like Splatterhouse, and Strip Fighter 5 Arcade Edition. And as it says here, too, only for adults. And so since it's based on the exA-Arcadia, it uses cartridges, and I think it can even play EXA cartridges too. There's like no BIOS restrictions there, but since they have this relationship with EXA, they're using the same ARC-1 cabinet, just with this different facade. And I asked EXA about how this was how it was received at the show, because they had a single hot pink cabinet behind, like you probably saw the pictures or the video that I showed earlier, where it was like kind of a horseshoe shaped, and so inside there, so that kids couldn't get to it or see it, was a hot pink club machine. But despite it being kind of hidden, I saw it constantly getting played. They said that they had a really strong response to it. So they had several manufacturers, like they said, Stern Pinball guys came over, Raw Thrills guys came over and checked it out. And so yeah, it's already out there to some degree. Be showing up at places like strip clubs or probably certain bars as well. And so I guess just, yeah, another thing that EXA's brought back to life, or the hot pink guys brought back, because there have been such games in the industry back in the 80s and 90s, but then it just kind of went away. All right, moving on from that thing that can always get you in trouble, at least on YouTube. And that's another exA-Arcadia game. That is, I should have edited that part out, Jitsu Squad. And so this is available on consoles. I covered this back when it was announced for consoles, but it was announced for consoles and arcade at the same time, which is a little bit unusual. But they announced it was coming to EXA. But this was the very first time that the EXA build had ever been seen. But I know that the developers, I think Tanuki Studios, were wholly focused on the console versions first, and after that, then they would begin working on the EXA version. And so this will have some changes to it. I mean, there was some changes present here at the show where it's like there's obviously things here that they weren't that were meant for the console. Like there's this clock thing that shows up every now and then, and it doesn't say what it is. But yeah, there will be lots more adjustments. There'll be a new character that's available in this one that is not present on the console versions. But interestingly enough, I was contacted by somebody who wanted to talk about giving me a key to the Switch version. So I'd love to pick that up and then be able to compare the two versions once this comes out. But this won't be finished until spring next year, spring, possibly summer, I guess, just depending on how things go with the development. But again, if you want a beat 'em up game, fantastic fun. I personally am a big fan of beat 'em ups. Love lots of stuff like that, and it's one of those genres I've missed. You know, I do have the Raw Thrills Ninja Turtles. It's at my other location, but yeah, I look forward and hope to see that this will do well, and hope to see other beat 'em ups come back to the industry. So that's Jitsu Squad. Let's see. Already talked about MegaBlaster and SpaceWarp 66 linked. Minecraft Dungeons is the next one. Oh, right here. And so this is already on my machine right here. If you can see it on the camera there. Kind of hard to see from that distance. But yeah, Minecraft Series 2, Minecraft Dungeons Arcade Series 2 is now available. It's already rolled out. I got the artwork for it. I bought some cards. The level actually added itself to the game since I have my unit connected to the internet. And as it shows here, that this was a surprise that they have 3 more levels coming soon. Now, which ones those are going to be, I don't know. So I've seen some comments online of people asking, you know, if I know anything about which levels it's going to be. No clue. But like with as you see here, the off screen, I filmed the entire level. I'll do a direct capture of this sometime next couple of weeks, for those that are interested. And what's cool about it is since it's underwater, when you do the dodge mechanic, it does kind of a swimming thing, swimming twirl. Just added new stuff with the Series 2 cards as well, like the baby turtle pet, new weapons, new armor, new skins, all that stuff. Otherwise, the gameplay is kind of the same. I wouldn't mind seeing, I've mentioned this before, I would love to see them maybe add a little bit more variety in attacks, or like if you could do combo presses of buttons, like push, dodge, and melee at the same time to have it do some sort of special attack. Maybe throw in a couple secrets here and there, and just give it a little bit more character. But you know, this game is out there, so you'll probably played it already, maybe. MotoGP VR. Let's see. Where you at? This one I was a little surprised to see popping up when it did, because MotoGP is one of those oddities, I guess, to come out of Raw Thrills, where it didn't get it didn't get nearly as much attention as like Superbikes did, and it was a more serious take on racing than like something like Superbikes. It's like at the opposite end of the spectrum, because it was trying to be more simulator style, and the bike seats on those were very detailed, very nice. I must have skipped over this, unless it's not on the list here. If I forgot to put it on. Oh, here we go. So this is another one that also is not shipping until spring 2023. Comes with an HP Reverb G2. As some of you mentioned in the comments there, it really didn't seem like the game looks very similar to the 2015 release, and which, you know, 2015 games showing their age at this point. Now, obviously, they had to have a more recent graphics card on it to handle the VR, that extra horsepower. But I don't know, just looking at it, doesn't seem like they've changed much on the lighting system. Now, again, since there's somewhere around 4 to 5 months between now and when it's going to be released, it's very possible that the graphics on this could get an update, and you know, maybe just a more HDR lighting or something like that. But of course, they have to be careful with using VR. They don't want to cause something that would cause it to go below 60 frames a second. And so I don't know if that might have to do with it, but yeah, it's not the best looker that's out there. But yeah, if you want to do motorcycle racing in VR, it's another option. They're not the first to do it. There's Ultramoto VR by Unis, which is kind of like Superbikes 2 with VR on it, or Superbikes 3 with VR. But this is their answer to that. And as it says there, you can push start to exit VR mode. Just hopefully, I almost wonder if that should be like hold start, so that you don't have like a kid come up and hit that and then suddenly you're not in VR anymore. But yeah, that's coming soon from Raw Thrills and Play Mechanics. Next one is the most popular one that I've filmed. Where are you? There we go. NFS Heat Takedown, or Need for Speed Heat Takedown. So as mentioned in the video, I mentioned before that Need for Speed has been in arcades before. There was Need for Speed Underground, Need for Speed Carbon. Those were all done by Global VR, which was big on working with EA at the time. But Global VR is defunct and hasn't been around for, geez, almost 10 years now. I mean, they actually were selling games up to like 2019 or so. But they just hadn't released anything new after 2014. But this one is being handled by Adrenaline Amusements, which is not known for serious video games like this, like generally speaking, or maybe serious isn't the right word, but they generally are doing like redemption stuff, you know, stuff that can be played without the ticket redemption aspect to it, but like just pure video game. They haven't done a ton of stuff like that. They've done Tomb Raider arcade. But again, most of their reputation has come from stuff like the Fruit Ninja arcade. They did Infinity Blade, which I like that one. And I don't know, not everybody did. But they'd never done like a sit-down racer like this. Now, they had been working on a dragon riding game. And I was told that it was kind of like the Blazing Angels arcade game where you can kind of go wherever you wanted to, flying a dragon and shooting stuff. But I guess they just haven't been able to figure out the right way to make that one work. And so but it also had a motion base. And so they changed their focus to this. And I did see a picture of this that couldn't get the picture. It's too early. But there will be a deluxe version of this with a motion base, bigger screen and all that. But this one also isn't slated to hit the market until spring, maybe summer of next year, 2023. And so there might be some changes to this as well. But they got some professional voice acting in there to do some live commentary. I mean, because it's based on a console game from 2019, it looks really good. You know, very good lighting effects, textures, all that stuff, very sharp. I also believe it's in 4K. And it has these 5 levels, and then you get to the Pro Cup. I didn't get that far to see what the Pro Cup does. And the coolest thing about it, which I guess didn't really show in this video, was the, let me go back. The LED screen here, and I'm not sure if it's like micro LED, it looked like it might be. But this, I guess, in a way is kind of their shot at Fast and Furious Arcade. You know, it has 2 monitors in a way, but this doesn't show the gameplay while it's happening. It'll show the picture of the person racing, what their position is during the game, or like when the police start chasing you, it'll say something up there. But, you know, just kind of a cool thing to do and add. And again, I would not be surprised if the cabinet has some changes by the full production. One of the coolest things about this was they had this thing that they like to call like a rump thump sort of thing in the seat. And so like when your car hits the road, you feel it. And it's such a cool feeling to have. I think House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn has one of these too. But it's not used extensively in that game. And it's been rare that I've come across racing games that have this. Every racing game probably should have this, you know, powerful subwoofer in the seat to just really set it apart from any sort of console thing. And so, and then the surround sound mix was also done very well. It was, I would definitely put this above Dead Heat Unleashed or any other racing game that I played at IAAPA, as far as the sound quality goes. And it's also, as you saw, I mean, the graphics are also top quality. And so, yeah, I mean, Bass Seekers have existed before. In fact, if you look at some old Atari games, flyers, they talk about, I think they actually patented what was called the rump thump idea back in the 90s. And so it's been around, but for some reason it's been very infrequently used. And so like the last time I remember a modern arcade game using something like this, or a racing one, is a game called Power Truck S, which was done by IGS, and that came out in like 2013. But the sound on that was awesome. I loved it. But why every racing game doesn't have one of these, I have no idea. They all should, in my opinion. Getting to the P's. Pac-Man Championship DX. I've covered Pac-Man Battle Royale Championship a few times before. There we go. And so just the one thing that I hadn't shown previously, which has been out since earlier this year, was this. The deluxe version, which is basically an ice hockey table with an 85-inch screen built into it, and so that way you have all 8 players on the same cabinet. Whereas if you got the non-deluxe version, which I think I show here, it's 4 players per cabinet, and you have to have a second cabinet already, like the older Battle Royale, to be able to convert that over to that. But oops. I'm all screwing up here. But yeah, this one, it's if you haven't come across it already, it's a different formula than the original Pac-Man Battle Royale. That was more tournament-based and round-based, whereas this one is score-based. And so it does make for an odd feeling. At least I've only played it at trade shows, though, so I don't know how it might feel in an arcade where you have lives and everything. But at least at a trade show, it always just, you kind of play until you get bored. And so that's where it's a little bit weird. But I'm sure it's just a different feel in an arcade where your money's on the line and you have so many lives and everything. But it is a different flow because the original, it does have an ending where you just get there. But I guess it'd be interesting to see how far you can go as a single player on this game. I think I caught some very short footage of Playbox, the 4-player version. I have Playbox on my channel here. It's like a grown-up version of Ball Toss Gaming. I caught this at IAAPA 2021. Throw balls at the screen to hit enemy targets, but the quality on the graphics is top-notch here, and I think it's like a micro LED screen, multiple games. Like this game right here that they had, or even the zombie game, I think they could easily take that, turn it into a proper light gun game for arcades. I mean, would need a little bit more content so that it's not so short, but you know, Crisis Zone was like 12 minutes, and a lot of 90s shooters were, 15 to 20 minutes. But these days, it's more try and get 40 minutes or something of content. But so Playbox had a 4-player version. Like this one they considered the 6-player. That was the 4. All right, almost done with the video. Slowly but surely. If anybody else is still here, trying to keep it interesting. Let's see. I'm already forgetting what I was looking at. Sailor's Quest, okay. Which was Eunice. Here we go. Now, like I mentioned, since I didn't play any VR at the show, oops, gosh, I didn't try this one. This is also one that I didn't really, from what I observed on the screen, it didn't necessarily seem like it would need the VR. I mean, obviously it needed to change because in the VR version you could be attacked from more angles. But basically it's like Dead Storm Pirates with VR. The graphics on this one, from what I could see on the screen, looked fine. I know that's a little hard to tell here, especially when you have a big thing popping up like that, which was annoying. I mean, as far as I could tell, he had his seatbelt on, but maybe it came off. Couldn't tell. But general game mechanics, which are kind of the same, although it did have this it looked like this was the UI, like boss health, and you collect treasure as well, and some sort of reward score thing going on. So it looked like it did have some additional interesting things there, but next time I come across it, I'll definitely have to give it a shot so that I could opine on it better. Otherwise, decent looking cabinet. It certainly looks different. Be interesting to play. Let's see, Shinorubi, pink label. Oh, I guess one that I should have covered earlier, because this was the first time I saw it, was Astro Ninja Man EXA for the exA-Arcadia. So this was a homebrew made for the NES by a guy named Ricky, and it was a game designed to push the limits of the NES and put a lot of sprites on the screen without flicker and just go crazy. And so this is available on exA-Arcadia. This is the first time I got to play it. It's auto fire style, but you can get more astronauts and increase your firepower there. And just if you love NES music, chiptune stuff, I mean, this is a fantastic one for that. And this is also a budget release. I think it's only like $600-700 for a cartridge. But yeah, there we go. Also for EXA is Shinorubi Pink Label. So this was the first public appearance of it. And so this game exists on Steam, but it's a vertical shoot 'em up game, which means it's scrolling vertically, but everything's set up for your typical horizontal monitor. And so the EXA version has properly been designed for tape mode as opposed to being a vertical mode. And so this one, I believe they still are doing some work on it. Don't know all the extra changes. I think they also mentioned something about like 2-player mode. I don't know if the Steam version has 2 players. I think this one supports that as well. And that's often a thing that EXA adds to its versions of the game, is it allows 2-player simultaneous play, whereas the console version does not. But, you know, just it supporting vertical mode will be a great thing for players. Probably should skip ahead. I mean, the art style reminds me a lot of like Mushishi Shama by Cave. And so very colorful, lots of plant life sort of stuff. And your ship is huge, but of course your hitbox is tiny. Nice explosion effects. So that's coming soon-ish. I don't recall the exact date on that one. But if you're into shoot 'em ups, EXA is really the way to go. Let's see, next up, Sniper Strike 2. Electric Boogaloo. Here we go. So this game is like a brand new, gosh, what is it called? Now this name is escaping me. Silent Scope. But for 4 players. Now this is not the first time I've seen a 4-player Chinese-made sniping game. They've been around since 2018, I think. Was the first time I saw one. But the first time I saw one, it was weird because they had different types of guns on each turret place. So what's good about this one is it's the same type of gun on every player station. And as you can see there, the guns look really nice. I mean, not an exact replica of a 50 cal, I'm sure, but you know, I guess getting close. And what's the quality of the LCD inside was just fine. And what also is really cool that you kind of saw there was they are on a hydraulic base. So if the height of the gun is not to your liking, you can push one of the arrow buttons and it'll go up or down. And now the recoil is not like an actual 50 cal sniper rifle, which would injure people. But it was decent, as I recall. I'm trying to remember exactly how it felt. So, you know, there is some recoil there. I think it's also pressured by the hydraulic. And so, you know, that's usually a little better than like a solenoid. And so a little bit more kick to it. My only big complaint on this one is just the graphics seem very aged. Like mid-2000s grade. And so I think that if anything, this could use a nice update on those, because like the frame rate's not great. The textures also, yeah, there's no 360 degrees on this one. And yeah, just animations are not the greatest. I mean, it's still playable. It's still fun. It's just, if you're into great graphics, then that's what you would expect. I think that the price on these, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I know other sniper ones like this in the past have been about $50,000. And so like maybe this one comes under that. I'm not sure. It's sold through Amusement Source International in the States. But it's like, if it is close to that, that's one of those places where you'd be like, I'd like graphics to be a bit better, please. At least 60 frames a second. But yeah, not a graphics showcase. Yeah, and I guess that too is that oddly enough, the picture on that, does look a little stretched. I'm not sure why. But this is one of those things that it's like the showcase on it is the hardware. It's the guns. You know, that's the coolest thing about it. Those feel really, really nice. Those don't feel cheap. And so there's that. And like I said, I had fun with it. It's just that's my main gripe are the graphics. I could use an improvement. SpongeBob VR coaster. I think I have footage of this. I'm pretty sure I do. Rylix is a company that made a non-motion VR coaster. So like all of its experiences are virtual roller coasters with a VR headset, but they'll have like a rump thump in the seat to simulate, you know, that shaking and whatnot, but it doesn't have the motion, and that allows them to have something far more inexpensive compared to like most VR coasters are around 50,000, whereas the Rylix I think it's 23, and so that saves a location a bit of money and provides a mostly similar experience just without the swaying motion part. But SpongeBob, it was just a SpongeBob game, SpongeBob coaster attached to it instead. Stepmania X, here we go, or DX. So this was also a surprise announcement that came like a day or two before the show that they were going to have something unique there, and that is a deluxe version of Stepmaniacs. Sorry, I keep calling it Stepmaniacs. I know it's Stepmaniacs. I know better. But I have a standard version of this, which on the other side of this were two standard versions. But just big, new, impressive cabinet, same software. And this is Kyle Ward, the creator of the Stepmaniacs game, and also the ITG games that Konami, you know, had an issue with back in the day. And so yeah, I think it was a 75-inch display, and just lots of lighting, you know, DDR and lighting, or pump it up and lighting, and any dance game and lighting always goes hand in hand. But quite a few times Kyle would show off how to play the game properly. But it was nice. One issue that I've often had when you see dance games at trade shows like this is they so often will have so many employees or dancers. Like Pump It Up generally does this, where they just have these people on the machines all the time. It's like, I get it, on one hand you want to have people show how it's made, but so often they're not allowing people that are in the show, or like you feel intimidated at going and showing up. But like with Stepmaniacs, or Step Revolution, they've been very good at allowing normies to jump on and play and not feeling intimidated. So I give them props for that and everything. And so yeah, but you know, sometimes they have to show it off too, so that people stopping by or that might not be inclined to play anyways see what it's all about. And who better to show it off than the game's creator? So so I'm not sure when this will begin shipping. I saw a tweet, I think, from them that might be soon. But yeah, I've had a pretty good experience with my Stepmaniacs, so no complaints there. Next up from Sega and Wahlap is Storm Rider 2. And I did make a mistake on the video there. I said it was Unreal Engine 5. It's actually Unreal Engine 4. Sorry. I had just seen them post Unreal Engine without a number, and I made the wrong assumption. So my apologies on that. I should have checked before publishing. But this one, it's kind of weird that it got a sequel out of nowhere, because like the first game, I don't know that it sold very well. And it was sold through Sega as well, but that was like 2011, 2012. And so nobody remembers it. I don't know if any of you have ever played the original Storm Rider. If you have, raise your hand. But this new one, it's basically a totally different game. So has this motion base, plus the swivel bike, plus a touch screen. Touchscreen, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't necessarily add anything to the game. Like you can pick your character with it. There's something mentioned on the Sega website about parts, but I didn't notice anything while I was playing there. Even though it's Unreal Engine 4, it's running at 60 frames a second. Seems fine to me. I mean, maybe I'm just not super picky in my old age on graphics like I used to be. I mean, granted, I'm sure it's not Forza, but you know, it's something. Oops, we got somebody in chat that needs to be gone. And let me see, 'cause okay, sorry about that. If I had a producer, I guess then I could have them do that without showing you all the inside baseball. But yeah, it's a motorcycle racing game. It's not quite as over the top as Superbikes, but you can still do stunts and you can pick up boosts, and has plenty of twists and turns. And like I said, to me, the graphics are fine. Yeah, it's just they're different than Superbikes 3, but they have a different lighting system, more realistic lighting system than Superbikes 3 would have. And so that's being sold through Sega now. I'm trying to remember the price. I think it's around $30,000 because you have to get like 2 of them. But yeah, if the Storm Rider didn't look like this, then it was the first one. But I'm just not sure how many of them are out there. Synth Riders. Let's see, where's Synth Riders? So this one I almost forgot about, but I remembered it at the last moment. I posted this just the other day though, so I know it's further down the list. Here we go. So this is done by VRStudios, and it's in that monolith cabinet that I mentioned earlier on. And so this was one of 2 new games that they had at their booth. There was the Synth Riders, and then they had Zombieland, Headshot Fever. Both of these games already exist, so if you already have like a quest or something, then you can already get them and play them. So I'm not aware of what, if any, changes were made to these arcade versions. And so at least what I've heard from the VR guys is they've never really seemed to really focused on that. They've usually just been content to, you know, kind of license existing console stuff and bring it over. One thing that is nice about this one is, yeah, first off is the frame rate on this isn't atrocious like on Zombieland. So if you already saw that video, I mean, I'll get to it later, but it's just like blows my mind that they allowed something like that to happen, especially on an old game. Shouldn't be happening. But just the issue I noticed with this one as I was editing it and I was watching it was just the input lag between those little orbs and where you're moving. You know, so that's where input lag matters. Is like if the EXA guys had done this, then I'm sure it'd be spot on. But maybe it is an issue with the controllers the way they are. I don't know if that can be fixed, but it just seems to be off by a second or so. But you know, it's nice that they have something that isn't a Beat Saber clone. Like they actually did have a game called Rhythmatic 2 that they were touting, and I thought that was going to be at IAAPA, and then suddenly it just nowhere to be seen and nowhere not mentioned at all. And now you had this, but Rhythmatic 2 was basically Beat Saber, you know, slashing notes as they come at you. This one is, I don't know, Punch Saber, like you're hitting those notes in a way, or Block Saber, you're blocking the notes, or Rhythm Shield or something, if you want to call it that. But yeah, synth wave songs, you know, that's a genre that's, you know, some of us old farts that grew up in the 80s, I guess, have some weird nostalgia for synths and whatnot. And so that's becoming a popular-ish genre there, and just, you know, the 80s blue purple look. Although I'll be honest, growing up as a kid in the 80s, I don't remember seeing blue and purple stuff all that often. I mean, once in a while, but not as much as it almost seems like everything that's dealing with 80s nostalgia these days has these 2 gradients together, and it's like, I mean, I remember it a little bit, but not that much. So whatever. So that's Synth Riders, and that's shipping now, I believe, from VRStudios. Toho Perfect. So this is another shoot 'em up from exA-Arcadia. So, and this is another thing that EXA gets to proclaim to fame, is they brought more new games to the show than anybody else. You know, most places it's like 1 or 2, maybe 4, 5 tops, but EXA just had a ton. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I grew up in the 80s. You know, obviously I was a kid, so my memory's fragmented. It's just, I don't remember seeing the blue, purple stuff so often everywhere. But, like, anything that I see that's, like, 80s nostalgia or synthwave, it's always doing that. And I'm struggling to remember as, like, a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old or whatever, seeing that everywhere. Or in the TV shows that I watched. Again, maybe saw it sometimes, but just the impression you get from a lot of it is that it was everywhere, and it wasn't. But here's Toho Perfect Sakura Fantastica. And so this is one of those games where I think I maybe heard Toho mentioned once or twice, but I knew nothing about it. And yeah, it's huge in Japan. From what I was told, the Japanese fan base for this treats this like original Star Wars fans treat Star Wars, or the OG Star Wars. And yeah, it's a huge IP, but in Japan. Now, this guy here that's playing it, he was from the Step Revolution booth, one of the Step Maniacs guys, and when I caught him playing it, and he seemed to know what it was and seemed very good at it. But this is based, I want to recall, and again, my apologies if I get this wrong, it's based on Toho 7, but there are some changes. They had some voice actresses come in and do some new voiceovers for it, and so this is the first time this IP has ever appeared in arcades, and obviously in Japan, shoot 'em ups still do really well. They can still make really good money, not so much in most venues here in the States. But if you're into this genre, you know, this could be, you know, one of the new kings of the genre, I guess. And so, very long play on this. And Jeremy, yeah, I have 2 exA-Arcadias. I don't have one that's set up with the vertical monitor, but I've been thinking about it, maybe. So, yeah, and I did hear Arcade UFO reopened, and so I would not be surprised to see them getting more of these vertical scrolling shoot 'em ups, just because you can get a ton of new ones from EXA. I mean, while this was the first time that Toho had appeared at IAAPA and the first time I had seen it, I mean, it wasn't the only shoot 'em up at the show. Of course, all of them were at the EXA booth. You had Cotton, Rock and Roll, which again exists on consoles, but the EXA version is the only version which allows 2-player simultaneous play, and I know they had to do some adjustments to the gameplay to make that work, because Cotton's normally just a single-player game. Let's see. And I also got to play Savariar for the first time, although it wasn't the first time it was at the show. Like, if you buy the system itself, it's somewhere around like $2,500, I think, and then the cartridges can be anywhere between like a little over $500 up to $2,000. It just depends on which one you go with. That's, again, it's still, even with a cabinet and the system and the cartridges, it's still cheaper than a lot of single new like racing games or a single new light gun game, which is crazy. But yeah, and of course some of it does depend on the venue. Like shoot 'em ups aren't going to work in every arcade out there. But like a place like Arcade UFO makes perfect sense because people are already coming there to play like Japanese fighting games or Japanese shoot 'em up games. And so if you have a theme like that or a section that's dedicated to those types of games, obviously I think it would do very well. I've heard from EXA that they are there's some venues where they're making like 1,000 a week, and so I mean, again, you guys say it's pricey, but it's not pricey compared to like, I mean, right here, each one of these costs more than a fully loaded EXA. And so, now granted, these do make a different amount than that, so that's obviously to be considered, taxes, shipping, and whatnot. But You know, once you have the system, it's not so bad. And I keep seeing criticisms saying, oh, well, these should cost the same as a console. Well, you don't understand the economics of the arcade business if that's what you think. And like I said, if you wanted to make your own PC with the cartridges and throw it out there and try and sell your cartridges for $60 a pop, good luck, but you're going to go bankrupt pretty fast. And so it's just you don't sell millions of units. You rarely sell thousands of units in the arcade industry. You're usually selling hundreds. And so with that, the pricing has to be different. And you know, there's also licensing considerations and all sorts of stuff to get into. But, you know, again, this really is one of the most affordable options that I know of in the arcade business. If there is another one, then I'm happy to hear about it. I think there's Polycade out there, but the problem to me with Polycade is that they don't have anything original. They don't have anything exclusive. It's really just taking existing console games and putting it onto their platform. And every time I have used something that's essentially a console in a box, it bombs horribly. It doesn't make any money. And so, yeah. And so, anyways, my opinion on that. But if you disagree, that's fine. Let's see. Next one is supposed to be Toy Story 4. I'll have to get back to him. Sorry, just got another call. I mean, yeah, the things in VR do the home ports, but I do, again, I have to question some of the earnings that I hear, or like, I don't see honest earnings on some things. Like merchandisers is one that manufacturers lie about. Like they'll take earnings on a cruise ship or something like that and then tout, hey, the Keymaster or the iCube is making $3,000 a week. But they don't say, oh, but that was on a cruise ship, which is a very, very specific sort of situation and not applicable to a place like this. Like the prize merchandisers, like I don't own them, but I've never seen them get anywhere close to that per week. And so it's like when I see some of these VR numbers, it's like, where is this exactly? And another thing those don't get into is how much the maintenance costs. Like I've talked with some family entertainment center technicians where they have like some VR arenas, and it's so expensive that like what they have to go through on that is they have their own WhatsApp channel among the technicians just to deal with the VR problems. And it's not cheap on maintenance side. And like it's something that most of these regular video games aren't costing me a whole lot on the maintenance side. I mean, sometimes when something breaks down, but then they're usually making up for it in earnings. So I don't know. And like, how many games do you guys want to pay $5 for on a pop? And that's the problem. The other problem with VR is because it's so hard, it costs so much to get started, and then it's so much to maintain, and especially if you have to have an attendant with it, that, you know, they're charging $5 to $10 a pop. And you know, I still hear people whining about paying 25 cents for something, and so it's like, yeah, you're gonna pay $5. At least maybe it's just the area that I'm at. There's a lot of cheapskates. But sorry. Most expensive game you bought that bombed? Definitely the Street Fighter 4 arcade. Just as I said, it was $10,000 just for a computer. Didn't include the cabinet. I mean, I was able to adapt an Atari Showcase cabinet that worked fine for it, but I think that only ever made a little bit over 3,000 of the 10,000 that I had spent on it, and but as I said, it actually it died after I some months after I had set it up, or after the console release came out. And so like it's sitting in my back. It's been sitting on my back shelf for years, dead. And so it just never made its money back, and because it was dead, I couldn't resell it. And even then, it started to get pirated anyways, and so the value on it dropped to like $100 for a hard drive. And so, yeah, Street Fighter 4 would be the biggest bomb that I've ever had. I mean, again, it was the most amazing thing when it was exclusive to arcades. In that 1 month and a half that it was not on console, it made crazy money. It brought people in, and times like this where it's been empty for me, I had guys here playing it, but as soon as they could play it at home, they left me. Anyways, Toy Story 4. Speaking of expensive stuff, here's a game that costs $12,000 to start, or if you want the higher quality limited edition, I think it is, or collector's edition, it's $15,000. It is a fantastic looking game designed by Pat Lawlor, the legendary Pat Lawlor, who did it's now escaping me, Funhouse, and I think he did Addams Family. But yeah, it's a very nice looking game, but like I said earlier, with pinball machines, just too much. I mean, already what I see at my locations is my pinball machines make maybe about $1,000 a year, but then they also start to, after about a year, they start to go down. And so it's like, this could take 15 years to pay itself off. Does that make any sense? No. Now, granted, to be fair, it would pay itself off once I resold it, as long as the value didn't collapse. But still, just new pinball, as cool as it might look, just isn't worth it to me. And one issue that I did notice at the show, and maybe this was just from shipping, is that the ball kept getting stuck right here, and it wouldn't unlock. And the game didn't seem to realize that it was locked. And so, but it only seemed to be like that on this one machine for a short time. So it just might have been a fluke. I'm not sure. But very, very nice looking game. It also incorporates some elements from the other Toy Story movies, but it is mainly focused on 4 because that's what they got the license for. So would I play this if I came across it at a location? Oh, yeah, sure. But would I buy one? Yeah, like I said, too rich for my blood. Checking the chat. I have not been to Pinballs. I would really like to. But I've only been to Texas other than on layovers. I went, they did Amusement Expo in Dallas one year, several years ago, and I did get out to a few places, but wasn't in Austin area, and so yeah, I didn't get a chance to go really far to check out places in Austin or Houston and all that. And yes, my Street Fighter 4 was a Taito X2. It actually broke down twice. And so the first time it was still within the 90-day warranty, and I was able to send it back to Japan, and then I got it back. But then it died again. And so I sent it to Andy Geezer Services over in the UK, and he was able to do a nice upgrade for it. And then it worked for a little while, and then that also died too. And I just kind of got sidetracked on getting it fixed because it just wasn't making a lot of money anyways, and then just kind of forgot about it until it wasn't worth it anymore. But I probably should find something for it now and get it going. But hello, Jason. So just going through my all the IAAPA stuff. We're almost done with the video and pinball stuff here, and so in answering your questions. Starting to lose my voice again a little bit, so I'll have to shut up and not say a thing for a while after this. Yeah, just like I said that with Bond. I'm not sure if you were here when I talked about 007 Pinball, Toy Story, or Guns N' Roses. It's like they look great and whatnot, but just at the prices that pinballs get it reaching at this point, it's just not worth it to me. And I guess I'm feeling kind of burnt out, or kind of feeling stiffed on a lot of pinball, just because I look at it's like, it doesn't matter what theme I buy, what machine that I buy, it does basically the same. Regardless of the theme, I could put it in. Brand new ones will do okay for a while, for the first year, and then after about a year, they just start to go down. And then they'll hit some sort of stride there, some sort of average, and they just stick to it. And like that's what happened with my Stranger Things. Like people were saying, why'd you trade your Stranger Things? And it's like, well, it wasn't making any money. I mean, it was a cool machine, and I guess now I'm stupid for giving it away because I guess they're super rare because of a low production thanks to the pandemic. But I still got a decent deal out of my trade for it. But yeah, it's just it's sad to me because I do enjoy pinball, but it's just becoming more and more untenable for operating. And now, granted, if I was running a bar, then sure, it would do really well. Because I do know bar arcades and pinball are like peanut butter and jelly, or chocolate chips inside of cookies. It does a lot better in that situation. But as I've talked about before, being in Utah, I mean, there already is some bar arcade competition here, and but also just Utah's a big family environment. There's tons of kids here. We have like the highest birth rate in the nation, and like you can't let kids into a bar. And so you do lose some of that. But again, I've seen some numbers from a couple of the local bar arcades, and I don't think they're complaining because they make money hand over fist. But yeah, Scooby-Doo does look fantastic. I do like that one, but again, I would like to play it. I do love that they kept it to the old theme instead of the new stuff that nobody watches. But and I was a little bit of a Scooby-Doo fan growing up and all that, and so I'd like to know how it does on location. And at least that one is a cheaper one too, and so granted, I know that their standard version is still a little pricier. It's not like $6,000, right? It was like $7,000 or something. But I mean, for the price, it looked like it was a more entertaining game than Bond was. And obviously, still, even the collector's edition still costs less than a Toy Story 4. So there's that going for it. But yeah, like overall pinball, the issue is that it's becoming more and more of a consumer product, a home consumer product, than it is becoming an operator product. And so it's like flipping around. And so like for most of its existence, it's been something to have at locations, but it's just earning less and less on location. And so many people that are really into pinball buy one for their house. And it's like for most of the people that buy one for their house, they won't come to an arcade unless there's like a tournament or something. And so I know Stern and Scorbit have been trying to get people out to play pinball with like Stern Insider Connected and having verified achievements. I do appreciate that. But like I said, I can buy a single video game that's $12,000, or I could buy a Toy Story 4 for $12,000. I know which one's going to pay itself off in a reasonable amount of time, and that's going to be the video game every single time. And you know, it sucks that that's how it is, and I don't know what the answer is ultimately, other than converting every single arcade into a bar. But that's also not realistic. And you know, and this is also the reason why Dave & Buster's doesn't touch pinball, is because you know it doesn't make money for them. But yeah, and that's one thing that sucks about trade shows like IAAPA, is that you don't get a lot of pinball. I mean, I've already talked about, I think, all the pinball that was there. So like you had American Pinball, you had Jersey Jack, and you had Stern. So you get those. Actually, Jersey Jack hasn't always come to these events either, and so I was surprised to see them there. But like all the boutique or smaller guys like Spooky, never heard of them coming there. Pinball Brothers not there, so unfortunately I don't get a chance to play stuff like Queen or Scooby-Doo, or I mean I have played like Rick and Morty before. Haven't seen an Aliens, haven't seen a Queen, and it's just only if I get lucky and finding one locally. But feel free to keep throwing the pinball questions out there. I'm going to continue on here with other stuff seen at IAAPA. And speaking of price, holy cow. So this takes the cake for the most expensive arcade machine you can find. And this is Cube by Triotech. And so Triotech is a company that did get their start making higher end arcade games. They created the very first HD arcade game, unless you want to count vectors, but not counting vectors. But like, it was the first game to be run at 720p, and it used a widescreen. And it was something, I can't remember what year it came out. It was called Wasteland Racers. And so it was a racing game. Don't know if you've ever seen it. I've never seen one in person. So it's kind of rare. But after that, they started to branch out into their XD theater. And then they came up with the XD Dark Ride. And they've found such success out of doing these big motion seat light gun experiences or even dark rides for theme parks that they've mainly been focused on that. Now, yes, they have had one very big product, the Typhoon, which is done very well. I mean, it's crazy to me because to me, the Typhoon, like, which is just a roller coaster simulator, it's not really a game. You just sit on a seat and it moves you around. But they do crazy good. Like, they make tons of money. And so that's why every family entertainment center has one. So they've had that for many years. Yeah, they're like the IMAX of arcade manufacturers. That's a good way to put it. But this right here, it takes their XD Dark Ride, which I think is something like $250,000, and turns it into an arcade machine. And so you got a 100-inch 4K screen, very good graphics. You got these very nice light guns. You have motion seats. I think they use D-Box motion technology, and you have multiple games. And the sound on it's fantastic. I mean, everything about it is really well done. But then, of course, you're wondering, okay, so you said this is a very expensive game. Well, from what I heard, these are around $100,000. So, yeah, not for the little guy like me. But if you can't afford it and you want to get something that, I mean, this takes games from the XD Dark Ride and puts them into an arcade cabinet. And so lots of value out of that because, again, get very high quality that just does very well. And it has scoring like an arcade game should. I'm not sure if it has leaderboards. I think it does. And then, of course, multiple games. And they're going to release... It's going to initially ship with 3, but they'll offer more as time goes on. And, as you can see, the graphics quality on this, I mean, again, you always lose something with a camera pointed at a screen, but in person it just looks really good. Top-notch quality. But and it's a light gun game, and they all create their own stuff. I like that about them. There's nothing that's licensed. I saw another one that they did which reminded me so much of Carnival because it's like a clown, and like the last boss is this evil clown thing. And so if you have $100,000 to burn, I would go for this, but otherwise, it's not for the street operator, and it's not for a little fry like me. Oh, didn't realize that I had some camera blur there. Let's see. Next up, Virtual Rabbids, the Big Ride Ultra HD. I don't think I got footage of that one. I mean, it's basically the same thing as the Virtual Rabbids that's out there. That's been a very successful thing. That's a lot like the Typhoon by Triotech, where it's it has 6 ride films, but it's with the Rabbids, and they worked with Ubisoft to do that. The Ultra HD upgrades the headsets so that you have higher quality. I think it's 5K quality screens or images in the screen. And now they do have one ride that is interactive. There's a space one where you look around and it auto fires, and so you use that to shoot things, and you do get points for that. So that was a nice little thing. But they didn't add any new rides to the Ultra HD version. It was really just a tech upgrade. Warlords Remake. All right. That one is found here. And so I know a lot of people in the retro gaming community are interested in this one. The Ice Cold Beer. And so these guys are called Retro Arcade Remake and retroarcaderemake.com. If you are interested in buying this, I haven't heard of any distributors carrying it yet, but this is your thing. You go to their website and you can buy this faithful licensed recreation of Taito's Ice Cold Beer. In fact, the Taito guys were at IAAPA, and I think they were at their booth on occasion. And so it's all legit and everything, and he's also had some original ice cold beers to the side, so you could like look at both of them, and like even the little dithering on the artwork is exactly the same. So it's very impressive what they managed to do with that, or like all the little bubbles and stuff. It's exactly the same. And so I believe they're taking orders for it now, for it to ship now. But I think the value on these the cost on these is roughly the same as if you were to find an original ice cold beer, but everything's been remade. Now, Warlords, this was a big surprise at the show. So what they had done is they created a new cabinet for Atari's Warlords, which, in my personal opinion, this is the coolest and best multiplayer arcade game that there is, and they're remaking it. Sorry. Hey.
for you?
Weekend was fantastic, but the week has been a little slow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Here or there? Or both?
Both. Yesterday, I don't think I had a. I was up there yesterday, and I don't think I had a customer until like 2:30. But here was busier.
Like
Yep.
less than 3 weeks in there, right?
Yeah. Yep. Counting it down.
Feeling good about that?
In a way, I'm not looking forward to loading stuff up on a truck, though. That always makes me nervous. But
Yeah.
you know.
It's very hard to move stuff and not break it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
That's
So,
a big
hopefully, I don't do that.
step. But it was time, right?
Yeah.
Give it your best shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll work out.
Yep. It's all you can do sometimes is just give it a shot. So,
Good. All right.
all right, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, let me know if you have any problems.
Yeah, we'll see ya. So yeah, this is being remade and it's being licensed. And what's really cool about the cabinet is, while it will come with an LCD, he made it so that you can remove the LCD, and if you have a 25-inch CRT, you can just drop it in. But he was also talking about getting an OLED for it and to give it a look that makes it look like an original with scan lines and everything. But again, this is being licensed with Atari. At the beginning of the video, I showed some PCBs, some circuit boards there. They are also reproducing those, but you would have to populate them with all the ROMs and stuff. But they'll be selling those. You could buy it as art, or you could repopulate the boards and have a new circuit board. But yeah, this is a Warlords remake. Big surprise there. Did see Billy Mitchell and Walter Day at the show, and they stopped by and checked it out. I don't know. I mean, I thought Billy had shut his arcade down. I don't know about that. I've been to the Orlando airport many times, but I've actually never come across his arcade because I think I'm in the wrong terminal. Let's see, zombie bowling. But yeah, I've been interested in maybe the Zeke's Peak, as both the Warlords and the Zeke's Peak. I do have a Warlords Cocktail, an original, but I just sold it. It's been busted for a long time. So, sorry, zombie bowling. Okay. I keep looking at these things and I instantly forget what I looked at. Sucks being old. Thrill as I look through a list. So this was at Amusement Source International's booth, Chinese made. It's not the first time we've seen a video bowling game where it basically takes a skee ball machine, adds a monitor to it, and turns it into a bowling game. Lane Master was really the first one by Eunice that did this. But there was a few copycats of Lane Master after that came out, mainly Chinese as well. But this one at least took it to a different place. Like the only other one that I'd seen that would try to do something kind of like this was one by a Brazilian company called Eyeball Dinos. But they didn't turn the pins into anything like dinosaurs or dinosaur eggs. They just had dinosaur stuff around it. But this one changes the bowling pins into zombies, which is clever, you know. And yeah, they do look like derivatives of Plants vs. Zombies, but pretty much every Chinese manufacturer that does a zombie game does that. So, it has a bonus mode on it where after you finish, you try and knock down as many of these moving pins as you can to get a big bonus. And so mainly for tickets, but I believe it works without tickets. And so again, that's from Amusement Source International. And so clever little thing, and at least the frame rate's not 15 per second. I mean, maybe 30. But yeah. Zombie Land. Zombies. Can never get enough of zombies in this industry. So Zombieland, I think had existed as a water gun game initially, but then they decided to dump that and make it just a pure, proper mounted gun game. And so here it is at the Coastal booth. It was right behind the Dinosaur Era game, and primarily made for tickets, but could work without them if you wanted to, if your arcade's set up like that. And yeah, for 4 players, I saw it being played all the time, especially with kids. You know, it's zombies without the extreme gore or blood or anything. Just like I had mentioned in this video, what was weird is I kept seeing this, like these goals at the top of the screen, like kill 20 zombies. But as the players would knock the zombies down or kill them, it didn't change. So I don't know if that's a glitch or if just something overlooked, or I don't know. But this game is listed on Coastal's website, so should be available and shipping now. And so if you want something that's basically kind of the same ideas like Iceman and whatnot, but you don't want to deal with the water crap, then there you go. It's a 4-player game. It probably would do pretty well. I haven't seen any numbers on how it does on location, so I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess. And then, yes, the favorite one of the whole shebang. I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't hear back from them saying, how dare you criticize? Because like this gentleman here in the background with the long white hair, he called this the verifiable hit of the show, and Bob Cooney, and I just have to vehemently disagree with him. So for one, it's just a port, just a license of an existing VR game, and so to me, that kind of takes away the luster from it. As I already talked about, you need some exclusive content for it to really stand out. Now, I guess the exclusive thing here would be the hardware, which is the VR headset attached to the back of the gun. But VR Agent by Sega did the same thing. They're the ones that did it first, so this isn't original. Hi. Yeah. How much do you want to do? 11. Make it 10. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, there's $5. There's 10. And if there's anything off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on for you. You're good. That's if you want a receipt. Okay, thanks. So yeah, VR Agent by Sega is the one that came up with this concept, and so there's that. But then the most surprising and shocking thing of it, and you can kind of see it, I know the guys are kind of in the way, so look at that frame rate. That should not happen. Now granted, I can give them leeway if this was an early alpha build, but it's like even then, this is an existing game, and they should be throwing some hardware in it that can handle the frame rate just fine. But somehow, I guess they threw a potato in there. I don't know. And it's super janky. And just for an arcade game, you should never, ever have a frame rate below 60. Just in my opinion, we need to have that quality. The arcade quality needs to mean at least 60 frames a second. And then, of course, throw in more stuff afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it might just be an unfortunate thing. Unfortunately, it should be something that's fixable, unless they're shipping these with just crap hardware and it's just down to the hardware. And so I don't know, but at the very least, it should, be something that can be fixed. I hope so, Sometimes there are developers where there is an issue with something and they don't fix it, and and maybe that issue is what kills their sales, and so they're like, well, this isn't worth the cost of repairing it. So I don't know, but I mean, I did hear people talking about it at the show. They were really impressed. It's just, again, I don't really know why, because it's just so derivative, and then the frame rate sucked. And I did talk to somebody who played it, and they said, yeah, the frame rate was just as bad there as in the screen. Because at first I thought, well, maybe it's just a problem with the screen. But it's also, you almost never see what's different, and the headset is different from the screen. And so if they could fix the frame rate, then I'm sure it would be a fine game. It's just, again, I don't know why it would be called a hit, because there's just Zombies again. Like almost every single VR platform has zombies, and it gets so boring to just be shooting zombies over and over and over again. And it's like, I get it. There's not, you could do robots, you can do dinosaurs, and those are also a little bit overused, but nothing's overused as much as zombies. So that's where I disagree that this is this massive hit that the industry needs to embrace. It's just, I don't see it. But that's my opinion. If you have a different one, feel free to share. Right. Like that's the other problem too, is it's like the frame rate like that. Like one thing that I saw touted about this by the Mr. Cooney there, right there, is that he was saying it has 40 minutes worth of gameplay. Now, already, that's one issue with this setup is it's kind of awkward to hold your hands in front of you like this. Now, imagine doing that for 40 minutes, and imagine doing that for 40 minutes at 15 frames a second. Would you really want to be paying like $5 a pop for that? Probably not. I mean, if you're fine with that, then the location will love you. But as a gamer, looking at it from that perspective, I don't accept that. Don't accept low quality like that. And arcade operators shouldn't either. And so, but again, if they could fix the issues, then we'd probably be fine. Just, I don't know if they will. All right, that gets us through our video stuff. Just to get into a few other things, like on the blog post, I mentioned Redemption. I just posted a video about All Stars Basketball, which I guess would technically be more of a video game. So if you didn't see that, this posted this morning. This is one of the reasons why I was a little late starting the stream. Now again, Sega's. This is not the first time that somebody has come along with a video screen for a backboard. Unis was the first ones to do that, as I recall, and then a bunch of other Chinese companies copied them. I also believe that Sega is working with a Chinese company on this one. But it's pretty versatile what you can do with a video screen on the back. You can. Other than the look, like they have all these game modes, missions in single player, challenges and multiplayer. Like this challenge is to get as many 3-pointers as possible. And although I'm not sure how it decides what the difference is between a 3 and a 2 on this one. But yeah, this is available now from Sega Amusements. So pretty cool little upgrade to your typical thing. Andamiro had Avengers Infinity Stone Challenge. Sega had Bop It. Bop It was very popular, based on the toy of the same name. Big Ticket Drop by Baytech. Carnival Wheel by Team Play. I actually did film some of this. I just didn't post anything on it, but it's like Big Bass Wheel. But instead of having printed art panels, it has LED panels, and it looks really impressive, especially when you have multiple ones. Cosmic Digger was a multiplayer crane game. Dodgeball Arena, ball toss game. Dragon Treasure, a coin pusher or marble pusher. Emoji Roller, another pusher with the emoji theme. Eunice was really pumping it up. And they also had another variation called Emoji Party. FGTV Out of Time, based on the FGTV YouTuber family. I don't really know them, but I know they're super popular, and it's a new game there. In fact, that's where this picture comes from. Can you guys hear me okay with all the gaming going on in the background right now from like the pinball machines and the Walking Dead? You have Jet Hoops by Valley Dynamo, this one was very interesting, where it was okay. It was based on the beer pong concept. Valley Dynamo did this one called Jet Pong, and it was a arcadified beer pong. Back in 2014, this became a huge thing where all these companies came up with beer pong. In fact, Baytech did a Redemption version of that, which was a little weird for kids. But Jet Hoops is the only one that survived all the competition, Jet Pong. But at IAAPA, they introduced a new Jet Hoops, which is the same concept. You have a ping pong ball that comes up with a jet of air, and you grab it, and then you bounce it on the surface or toss it. But instead of beer cups, plastic cups, you have hoops, and there was 3 hoops, each with a different value. And that was cool, nice variation on that. And I also think that would work fine without redemption. Obviously made more for bars. MVP basketball, just another basketball game. Nothing, no video screen to it. Just making sure, because I might also be speaking louder here just because the noise here to me is really loud. So also just wanted to make sure. Over the Edge is a merchandiser with a video game component by Eunice. Pac-Man Baller. I think I have footage of this, so I need to go through my archive and check, but this is a brand new basketball machine by Bandai Namco. And Pac-Man theme on it, but it has a really cool LED screen on the back, and it's not used in the same way as All-Stars Basketball is, but it is pretty nice. And Pixel Air Hockey, very surprising looking air hockey table that here we go. I did a GIF of this one. Put it here somewhere. Actually, maybe it was on the last one. Yeah, let me scroll way down here. Where's the P's? P. Here we go. So, like, if you hate LEDs stuff, LED effects in games, then you won't like the Pixel Air Hockey table. But if you do like it, very, very impressive setup. Now, the game itself is basically Pac-Man Smash, where you'll have big air hockey pucks, and then you'll have these miniature ones, and the game gives you different points depending on which ones you get through your opponent's goal. Becomes very chaotic, and oftentimes pucks go flying off the table. Like, pucks always go flying off the table, but more so when you have all these miniature pucks all over the place. So, yeah. Let's see, back to the list. Power Puck Fever, which is Eunice's take on that same multi-puck concept, but I didn't see any mini pucks with it, just large pucks, but it would have like 2 or 3 on the playfield at once, and not quite as LED-rific as the Pixel. Rick and Morty Blips and Chips, and so a Rick and Morty themed pusher by LAI Games. LAI has posted on LinkedIn that this did very well for them, had a ton of attention, obvious. It's Rick and Morty, so it gets to ride that. I didn't really see anything about it that might be innovative, but I don't really follow coin pushers, so maybe it did have something on there and I just missed it. Road Trip, another redemption game, kind of a skill-based one, pushing something as hard as you can, or just amount of right hard on it, I guess. Roll and Jump is a skee ball game that also had some cool LED effects. It's by the same people who made the Pixel, but just lots of interesting LED effects on it that I've never really seen on a skee ball machine before. And not the same as the ice ball effects. I like targeted, like little display or like LED panels and stuff. Just pretty cool. Shooting Madness. This was another video basketball machine, kind of like the All-Stars basketball. Getting some attention there. Slide Up. I mentioned this before, a redemption game uses a screen in the top and reflects it off the glass, but then there's a physical ball thing inside of the game itself, and you're pulling a pinball plunger back, and it'll show you different targets and with different values. You're obviously going for the highest ticket value, but it had a mini game, like just a video game built into it too, which was surprising. Sink Pong, this was from Co-Muse, and you're just dropping the ball, and there's these 3 moving hoops, and you're trying to drop it through all of them to win as many tickets as you can. But funny enough, when I came across it at the booth, it was off, so must have had a problem. The hand was like the Keymaster merchandisers, but instead of a key, it's a giant metal hand. And also, like Keymaster, it pulls the prize out, but hand literally just pushes it out through the back, and it falls through. Wheel of Fun, I think that was a pusher. I don't remember. Work Zone was a crane machine that had a video game aspect to it. And then World Tour Football Tour was soccer, and you have a goalie, and so it's like a penalty kick sort of game. But the weirdest thing about that one is that the goalie was just made out of this thin piece of plexiglass, and it was kind of wobbly. And so it's like, I hope they update that so that it's like a piece of metal or a thicker piece of plexiglass that doesn't look like it's going to snap when somebody hits it too hard. On the Sega booth, or the Sega booth video, let me see if I can find it. There was augmented reality darts, which was actually pretty cool to see in person. Yeah, here we go. And where were they? So you can see them briefly right here. So yeah, or they say augmented reality darts. I guess technically it's mixed reality darts. Augmented maybe sounds cooler, but it's projection mapped darts, and so that's pretty cool. Hi. Okay. There you go. If there's something off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on. Yep. Let's see. Here's the Bop It game that I mentioned. Yes, I know, I need a card system. Hi. Just no rough play, bring it back when you're done, and I gotta go turn that on first. Let me go turn something on. Here's the augmented reality darts, which went out of focus. Okay, never mind. I already turned that on. Forgot. But yeah, this allows darts to have a lot more versatility than they normally would have. Hey guys, do not do that with the shifters. Says right there. I hate Maximum Tune 5 for the shifter at this point. I have to yell at people every single freaking day, and I'm getting tired of it because I'm a babysitter. So I do not care that most arcade racing games don't have a shifter anymore. It's like, I know, I get it. That's an aspect that you don't get at home, but when the shifters can cost me hundreds or maybe over $1,000 to replace just because somebody has to be an asshole every single day, then yeah, I'm over it. So but that's from an operator perspective. As a gamer, sure, I would definitely prefer to have a racing game with a shifter. Anyways, that's my angry rant. Let's see, flash pads. This was an interesting little concept that I just came across at random. Where is it? Here we go. So it had multiple little games, RGB LEDs underneath every single stompable panel. And so it had like dancing games or chasing games or maze games. So just cool little thing, mainly for family entertainment centers, maybe a theme park. Something like that. But something a little different. That's one thing I love about IAAPA. You always find something a little different laying about. Let's see. Where was Ghostbusters? Maybe it was higher up. Oh wait, here it is. So Hollowgate is pretty well known out there. They're at a bunch of family entertainment centers, but you know, for the most part, I haven't seen a lot of stuff that they've done on the software side that's garnered a lot of attention. I think they have their own Beat Saber clone, but this would be the first licensed thing that they have that I think. And it was interesting how they did it because they had this their Blitz motion car simulator thing where you're driving the Ecto-1, and then on the other side with the normal arena, you train to be a Ghostbuster. And so if you're a Ghostbusters fan, I think this would be a great thing, but I mean, even if not, it's cool what they did with it, and shooting ghosts instead of zombies. So there's that. I mean, you're still shooting the undead, right? Just it's not zombie guys. And so let's see. But I noticed a lot of the VR stuff at IAAPA had these kind of setups where like it's putting the players on an elevator, and then it's kind of a turret shooter from there. And so yeah, that seems to be a common theme with a lot of the arenas that are Hologate derivatives, because I think they were one of the first ones to do that. Sorry? Nope, you gotta buy them. I can't make money giving it away. You can take one of those if you want. Let's see. Some of these other VR stuff I'll get into in a minute. I don't know if Malik's still with us. Looks like the Cubics will be the next one, and then I'll get to the end with the assorted VR stuff. Yeah, Cubics. So this company, InnoWise, they're based out of Romania, and they've had their own kind of Hologate-like platform called Arcadia VR, which instead of 4 people in the arena, it had 6. And they had their own content. But they launched this at IAAPA 2022, this Cubics. So as you can see there, it's like a VR controller, but they've made their own handles for it. And so it's almost like a Wiimote sort of thing at this point. Different shape, or maybe PlayStation Move is probably the better comparison as far as the design goes. But this is just a projection map room. So each one has seamless projection mapping on it, and you play a shooting game. And so they only have one game for it at the moment, but they were talking about doing other shooting games. And so I think it was somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes of gameplay, and it walks the people through, and there's a little bit of a story, and it has these characters that they created, and some bad guy that you got to stop. And so it does things to make players have to go to the different screens and shoot at it. And yeah, I'm sure once micro LED walls become affordable, then you can do like curved screen stuff, but it'll probably be a while before the micro LEDs can compete on a cost basis versus projectors, would be my guess. But this is Cubics by InnoWise. So again, they'll also have more games coming down the pike, and you have scoring as well. So, and I think it also has a camera system, I think. I might be wrong on that one. So you can save your score afterwards, something like that. So it's a cool thing. Yeah, and that's one nice thing about these things. They are very immersive. And again, this is not really for a small arcade, a cheap arcade. It's for a family entertainment center or a theme park. But I'm pretty sure this also costs a lot less than your typical VR arena. Most VR arenas are somewhere like $80,000 to $100,000. I don't recall what the price was on this. I want to say maybe 50. But yeah. Hi. Okay. Go ahead. There you go. And if there's anything off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on. So yeah, it's definitely cheaper than your typical VR arena because you don't have to have wearables. You're not putting something on your face. You're not wearing a haptic vest or anything like that. And this also has a motion rumble floor. It has wind effects too, so it does a lot to immerse you in there. So it'll be interesting to see where they take this, and as they add more games to it. I mean, it's not the first game room I've seen. Yeah, let me go turn something on here. Okay, I just turned everything on so that way I don't have to go and do that, but we're almost done, and my voice is almost going out as it is. Let's see. Next up is, okay, other VR stuff. So earlier today, I posted a video, if you didn't see it already, the Part 1 IAAPA stroll, where it has stuff like animatronics. Like this Baby Yoda one that I saw was super impressive. Like just, I was like, is this the one they had in the show? Because it was so well done. But there were some other animatronics that were really cool. You know, this is stuff for theme parks, or this was for bars. You know, animated LED fixture stuff for games, but they weren't coin operated. Simulators like Max Flight, or the game box sort of thing, just this massive LED wall that's like bigger than a house. And so pretty impressive stuff that you can come across. That's one thing I always love about IAAPA, just wandering around the show floor, finding stuff to see. And then there was part 2 where I get into the VR stuff. Here we go. So here's Hyperdeck, and so Hyperdeck's been around for a while. They're always working with a company called Creative Works, and so they have this kind of motion floor, like rumble floor. They have these fixed turrets, they have wind effects, and so some people were talking about this game here that was a zombie shooter game. I mean, I was hearing people saying this was really, really cool. I mean, again, I'm just kind of like, sure, zombies, I guess, but you know, whatever. Here's a competitive VR thing where it's wireless, not tethered, and what's interesting about it is the location can set up these walls wherever they want, and it'll map it into the game. And so this is a lot like the concept that I saw years ago called the Void VR, which was actually based out of here in Utah, and but they went bankrupt and failed. But yeah, the Void was at Disney Quest. That's the one that some people might have seen before. But again, they went bankrupt. The pandemic wasn't nice to them. But this kind of seems like a similar concept, but allows the location to configure their arena, and then it's almost like laser tag. You know, you're just shooting each other with stuff in the maze. It's not a huge maze though. I'm sure it could get bigger. I don't know how big it can get though. Yeah. Spree Interactive. This one is also a wireless VR setup. They have a lot of different games. This one was Whack-A-Mole, which did not seem to be very fast-paced from what I could tell. But they have some other stuff too, like they have a space adventure game, although I've not played that one, so I'm not sure exactly what you do. I also think they have some sort of search for clues game, but they're a little more into adventure stuff, I think, than shoot 'em up stuff. Springboard VR, a wireless VR arena. Now, of course, one issue with a lot of these VR arenas, other than the price, is they all need an attendant to operate. And so here's, see, like where it's, the play is, they're all on elevators or something. But on this one, you have to wander around. So you could probably walk off the elevator. I don't know how that would work or how they handle that. Or if maybe the elevator moves with you. VAR Live, which is kind of like a first-person shooter thing. I think these guys might have been around before the VR Agent game. So it's very similar to VR Agent, but I think it's another zombies shooter. I'm losing track of how many zombie shooters there are, and that's why I'm just kind of like, whatever. VR LEO. The CEO of this just stopped me at random when I was filming something else, and she told me to come to her booth and check her thing out. I did later, not right away. But kind of looked like a Halo-style shooter, and just shooting at aliens, I think, or robots. And I think this also has multiple games available for it. Pretty much every one of these VR things have multiple games. on them, and they're usually a shooter of some kind where you're not really moving around. One that I didn't film this time, but I have filmed in the past, was Virtuix Omni Arena, which does have an omnidirectional treadmill, so you can walk in place in any direction, which is cool. Sometimes they're a little hard to film because they have their own enclosed arena, and so I guess I need to just say, hey, as press, can you guys let me in so I can film? That's what I need to do, because otherwise filming it, you're just filming a box on the outside. You can't really see inside. Here's one that was requested at the beginning of the chat, and that's VR360, based out of Brooklyn, New York. So they have quite a variety of stuff that is available. That kiddie rides with VR, VR arenas, VR roller coaster. Over there on this other side, like a VR flight simulator, I think it is, VR driving game, and so these guys are all in on VR. Unfortunately, when I was around, I didn't get a chance. They were on the other side, like the opposite kitty corner side of the arcade section, so I only got to check them out once. But, they had this stuff set up, the driving game, and, almost all the working ones were getting played. And so they were a popular booth. You might have seen them out there. I think in the past, too, the VR360 had a Tron bike, or it looked like the Tron Light Cycle from Tron Legacy. I didn't see it at IAAPA 2022, but I've seen it in the past. But it had some sort of like flying bike sort of game on it. And then last but not least was Sega's VR Agent, which again I've covered before, but this was the first time I had seen the dual cabinet, because as far as I know they only sell it in this style, but at previous trade shows they only had a single player prototype. But this is a first-person shooter game where you're shooting people, not zombies, or you're shooting terrorists, I think it is. And, there haven't been a lot of first-person shooters in the industry other than what VR has brought to us. But interesting in that this has the light gun game feel because you walk automatically once the enemies are eliminated. Whereas a lot of VR stuff, it just keeps you in place. And so, but I guess sometimes that might be weird depending on the VR setup. But I played this one before and I thought it was fun. I like first-person shooters. Again, I think the combination of the light gun game elements into this one is what helps. And that's another problem with some of the VR stuff out there that you've seen in this video, is that they do not come to this industry with a background in arcade games or arcade game design. And as I've talked about before, there is a big difference between how console games are designed and how arcade games need to be designed. And when you just throw a console game into an arcade cabinet, it oftentimes is not this big success. Or if you were to do things, take arcade elements, like one of the things I'm talking about here was like you saw the targets on the character, or the automatic movement of the character and how that was on rails. And so like if you borrow VR games, I think for them to see better success, need to start looking at how arcade games, like light gun games in particular, are designed and mimic those elements if they want to see better success. And I think that's where VR Agent really stands out, is that it basically is like Time Crisis. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, it can be tricky with the automatic movement just because, you don't want to make people go dizzy all of a sudden. So I do get that. But at the same time, like when I played it, the only issue I had with VR Agent, it was like sometimes you have to move around a lot, and because you have to hold it up to your face like that and it's not attached to your face, sometimes it would go out of focus because, the VR has to, because it's using stereoscopic 3D, it has to be within that certain field of view to work properly. And so sometimes with the quick movements, it would fall out of that. And so that's really my only complaint about the game style, is it does get a little awkward like that. And of course, like I also said, for very long periods of time, it's not great to be holding it like that. You get a little tired. I mean, you could get tired just holding a light gun sometimes. And so there's that. But yeah, that covers IAAPA 2022. And hi. There you go. Yep. And I agree with that. Good speed is that. Like I said, I did not use any VR at IAAPA because I was feeling a little under the weather, and I practically didn't see any wipes. Most booths didn't have a wipe that I could see. A few of them did, and I don't trust the face masks. I've known of people who have gotten pink eye even with using the face masks on public use VR, and so like that's just another personal thing where I don't care for it, and because you really need to make sure that stuff's clean if you don't want to be transmitting something to somebody else, and or getting something that somebody else had. And you know, if you've ever used an arcade VR thing and some sweaty guy just came off of it, you're probably not going to be like, you know, even cleaning it, you might be a little like, I don't know. And so, again, like I said in my VR video, that's where I just don't, I keep seeing a lot of people in the VR side of the industry claiming that VR is going to replace arcade games, like these kind of arcade games that are around, and I just don't see it because there's just too many issues there with wearable technology. And now, again, I'm not saying that VR won't have its place, that it doesn't have its place. In the right venue, it can do fine. But, again, replacing the non-wearable entertainment aspect, I don't see it. I haven't been convinced yet. So maybe if somebody out there can convince me, then maybe I'll change my tune. But that's my stance on it so far. And like, I don't have anything here VR. The closest I've ever gotten was the Star Wars Battle Pod, which had the dome screen, which to me, dome screens are cool because they give you a similar effect as a VR headset, and just it's a little easier to use. Anyways, it's time for me to end the stream, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you around. Yeah. And I gotta get to customers. Thanks for watching. See you at the next